3, 2, 1.
Welcome everyone to the second evening of the 25th annual FisherPoets gathering. I'll be your host this evening. My name's Elma. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling from the Lummi and Nooksack, Bellingham, Washington. And I am very excited to welcome our first guest joining us from across the pond at 1 in the morning her time. She'll do a brief intro and then a pre-recorded version. But we have Janie Meneely, who grew up around her father's boatyard in Annapolis, Maryland, and where she later on worked as a sailmaker. Once the editor of Chesapeake Bay magazine, she became known for her songs and stories about the Bay's people, places, and history. So we're going to jump right into it and welcome Janie this evening. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, hello from beautiful downtown Whitby on the shores of the North Sea. We're the lobster capital of North Yorkshire. I'm going to do a little song for you. It's on a video pre-recorded. It's the original version of my song, Nasty Nell. I hope you enjoy it. Bunky, he was waiting for that big old fish to strike, daydreaming about women and the fights on Friday night. He hawked a loogie o'er the side and took another chew as something starts to thrashing, such as feisty fishes do. No sooner Bunky cocks his head, a female form appears. It's Nasty Nell the mermaid, just as sure as Bo is beer. Damn it, Captain, Nellie says, you snaggled my caboose. I'll give you to the count of 2 to up and cut me loose. Hold on, sister, Bunky says, I don't believe we've met. Why don't you just thrash until that hook gets good and set? And then I'll haul you up on deck, and won't we have a time? Salty gal such as yourself would probably suit me fine. Now, Nellie ain't no beauty, I forgot to mention that. Tattoos on her biceps and barnacles up her back. Seaweed sprouted from her chest, a scar ran across her gut, and she swore like any blue nose when she got her dander up. It's go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. Bunky starts to chuckle just to see the mermaid spit. Settles in his deck chair just to watch her pitch a fit. Tell me when you're tired, love, he says to Nasty Nell. I don't want you all tuckered when I ring that party bell. Now see here, Nasty Nell pipes up, this isn't any joke. You piss me off and in a flash I'll up and sink your boat. I like a spunky lady, Bunky answers with a grin. And he grabs his fishing tackle and he starts to crank her in. Go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. There, Bunky tells her. There's no need to feel distraught. All's fair in love and fishing, and, well, you're the ones got caught. But Nellie held a mirror up and flashed it from her hand. I got $50, says you ain't setting foot again on land. With that she flipped her scaly tail and jiggled loose that hook. She flipped old Bunk the finger, and without a second look, she dove down deep and swam away without a pretty please. Oh, Bunky felt the water start to swirl around his knees. It's go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. There's a lesson for the learning, for them as would be wise. Watch out for them there mermaids, what'll cut you down to size. They are the stuff of legend such as found in any book. Why, a mermaid, she can sink you with a single dirty look. There's countless songs and stories, though no witnesses survive. They don't appear inclined to leave our sailor boys alive. They'll flash that blasted mirror, and down in the drink you'll drop. Just ask our buddy Bunky next time he washes up. It's go to hell, says nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay jiggered mitts on me.
Amazing. Thank you, Janie, for joining us from across the pond. We'll wish you good night since it's late there and continue on with the show. But amazing addition to the gathering this year. Up next, we have Larry Thormalen from Astoria. For those of you who are joining virtually, Astoria, Oregon is the home to the FisherPoets gathering and has been until we had to go virtual the last year or two. And I'm excited to welcome a local. Larry is the tugboat guy and has been for over 40 years, running up and down the coasts, much of it spent supplying fishing ports like Dutch Harbor and beyond. So I'm going to pass it over to Larry. Thanks for being here.
And I thank you very much. And I'd like to take just a second to thank everybody who's putting this on, because it's just really important to a lot of us who'd like to keep the inertia going so we could eventually get back together and do this live again. That would be great. This thing, a little thing I've got for you this evening is about a future fisherman at this time. When the story starts, he's a young man who lives in New Jersey, and he's of Sicilian blood, and he gets through high school and he decides that he wants to go in the military. He goes in the military, he goes to Germany, does his time in Germany and comes back, and the family wants him to go in the family business, and he doesn't want to do that. He really kind of think he'd like to be a fisherman. So he puts a pack on his back and hitchhikes across the country. And as the months go by, his hair gets long and his beard gets long, and he looks an awful lot like a hippie when he rolls into Bellingham, Washington, and it's at that time very much a hippie fishing town. And now it's a warm summer evening as he saunters through town with his entire possession, all of his possessions on his back, and he hears a loud bar, and it is a Saturday night, and he's broke and he'd really like to have a beer. So he decides to go into this bar and to see what's going on. And he's always been the guy with the greatest smile in the world. And he goes in and he starts bussing tables and smiling and wiping things down and taking dishes back to the back. And he does this. The place is jumping. It's Saturday night. It's full of fishermen, as luck would have it. The waitress notices this guy, this stranger that just came in, and starts helping her, and she approves a lot. Well, he ended up working all through the night until closing time. And he gets his beer, and then he gets a little food, and he got another beer. So things are working out. Things are really looking up for our Sicilian from New Jersey who wants to be a fisherman. Now, as luck would have it, the waitress takes him home. Oh, joy, things are really looking up now. He even has a place to be. So as we move along a couple of years down the road, we hear wedding bells. And the waitress and the boy from New Jersey, who's now a fisherman well ensconced in the fishing community, are enjoying their wedding. They're opening presents And it's just a wonderful evening. And one of the many little things that they get is a card from back in New Jersey. And the bride opens it up and she said, "What's this?" Well, this was a check for a very good month's pay, which really surprised her that something of this size would come in. And she turned to her groom and said, "Is this the Gambinos?" Now the groom, being a fine Sicilian, put his hands out to the side, tipped his head, raised his eyebrows, told his bride, "Roger that." But then he said, "But I'm making an honest living now, aren't I?" And so he always did for the remainder of his life. The New Jersey boy made an honest living, and it is even so today. And thank you.
Thank you, Larry. An inspiring story as a local Bellingham resident. Yeah, I can picture it happening right downtown. And I am excited to welcome the author of This Side of Sand Island. Victoria Stoppiello is joining us. She is a fisherman's daughter and wrote essays about fins, fish, and fish politics for the Chinook Observer for roughly 20 years. Before I pass the mic, I'll encourage you to check the book out and look for it in your local independent bookseller. And help me welcome Victoria. I know we're on virtual, but I hope folks are clapping and cheering to their computer to help us welcome everyone this evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Selma. Okay, the piece I'm going to read is called Three Keepers. And I'm assuming that most of you know what keepers are. Anybody who fishes, these are ones we keep and those are ones, even sport fishermen get into that. So, three keepers. Bob and his wife, Marie, showed up at our house at the appointed time to review the contents of the box. I bumped into Bob at a flea market. He was buying little fishing plugs, and I looked over his shoulder and commented that I had a box of old wooden plugs from my dad's commercial fishing days and had never figured out what to do with them. Bob had commercial fish too, and now was collecting salmon plugs. I commented that some of my plugs were so large, I doubted there were salmon big enough to come after them anymore. Bob assured me there was still big fish coming up the Columbia, all the way to Kashmir, where he lives. But I know you know, and certainly Bob knows, that the huge fish that used to spawn far up the watershed have been blocked and extinguished by Grand Coulee Dam. I don't know the origins of these plugs, except that they were in a box in my dad's garage workshop after he died. Only 3 plugs had a discernible manufacturer's label. One was a Hansen, signed Mayor Ellefson. Hansen was a fishing lure manufacturer in Edmond, Washington, in the first half of the 20th century, and rarely signed his plugs. Internet plug sales were generally a few dollars to 10 or 12. Or there were stories of much higher prices, so I had no idea what my cash was worth. When Bob and Marie arrived, the plugs were spread on our dining room table, grouped likes with likes. The big ones with no hooks, the little yellow and red ones, the large ones with different colors and corroded treble hooks, the oddballs, including a strange-looking bake-like shoehorn device with a fixed double hook that Bob said was probably a halibut jig. Some were 7 inches long, some half that size. Almost all were wooden, some with carved and painted eyes, some with eyes of glowing glass, some with a finish so smooth they appeared to never have touched water. But most had a fine white coating that later I realized must have been ancient seawater. There were several tiny, heavy metal fish heads with bright crimson eyes, one with a mini duster of fluorescent feathers flowing behind. Several plugs had been crudely repainted with orange stripes, clearly the work of the same unsteady hand. Bob said fishermen experimented if plug didn't catch fish, they'd add colors. As we picked up plugs, talked about fishing and my dad, Bob said he had $100 cash, but could write a check. Would 100 do it? I couldn't answer. I stood stock still, thinking. My husband had silently counted. There are 63 plugs, he said. At $3 each, that'd be $180, but some of them could be worthless, and some could be priceless. What are you going to do with them, I wondered aloud. Marie described their fishing bathroom, complete with a toilet seat with hooks, flattened and embedded in rosin. Bob said he'd probably try fishing them. Okay, 150, I said, but I selected the smallest bright-eyed specimen to keep. Then Bob said, you should take this one too. It's a beauty. Holding up a large plug with a luminous aquamarine back, you should keep a few. They were your dad's. Well, I'm attracted to the beaten up ones with the crude painting. Bob said, take the one shaped like a banana. That's unusual. I'd wondered what to do with these old things from my dad's family. I'm the only child of an only child. Bob and I crossed paths, and one of my dilemmas had been solved. I thought this would be a straightforward business transaction. Selling something I didn't need, had been sitting in a box for over 20 years, and had no plans for using. But as the day waned, instead of relief, a feeling of sadness hung about me like a weight on a trolling line. I know I should have let the stuff go, but I have no option. It isn't a simple matter of handing things down to the kids. A childless person is a bit like a dam on a river. Things flow down to you and then stop in a log jam, and it takes effort to force them free. That's it.
Thank you, Victoria. Lovely. Great to hear you. For those of you who are coming in a few minutes late, you are tuned in to the 25th annual Fisher Poets Gathering, virtual this year. And my name's Elma, and I'm welcoming next some East Coasters, Mark Allen Lovewell, joined this evening by Molly Knoll. Mark is a Fisher poet of many years, a longtime storyteller, singer-songwriter, and writer, folk singer from Martha's Vineyard. Mark has been on the water on all sorts of different ships and fishing boats, and I'm going to let him take it away and tell you a little bit more about him through his music. So welcome from Bellingham to Martha's Vineyard, Mark.
So the song I want to sing for you is a song that celebrates the herring fishery. And the lovely lady right next to me is Molly Knoll, and you will agree with me. She's a lovely singer and a dear friend. Here we go. Oh, must say the herring fishery on the East Coast is in trouble. And for those of you who love salmon, we love river herring. They're very similar. They're anadromous fish. They come in the spring and go upstream, and they struggle. They have a hard time, and there's been a moratorium for years. So I hope you love the song. Never was a spring when the herring didn't come. Never a night when the fish did run. Never a thought we'd ever get this way, that they'd be so scarce in this modern day. A humpback whale breaches from a deep dive. A bald eagle flies from so way up high. Shiny silver scales and that old fish weir. You gotta love it, boys. The fish are here. These seaside fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. Fish scales they made, Priscilla pearls. Wampanoag, Penobscot, and every coastal tribe. Winters were cold, it was hard to survive. Hope of spring came with this fish of the sea. They came wiggling, swimming up the stream. Scarce they aren't around much anymore. They are so depleted, they're gone from our shore. Don't tell our forefathers we've emptied the banks. We squandered them and have our greed to thank. These seaside fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. Fish scales they made, Priscilla pearls. When the shad bush blossoms and the snow melts, the ponds open up and the creeks let out. Wherever a trickle of fresh water meets the sea, there's a herring waiting to come upstream. In the darkest night, when that moon rises, turn that lantern light high, the herring have arrived. Their names connect us to where we should be. Blueback, alewives, Bucky, and Sawbelly. Last chorus, here we go. These fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. The ladies, they loved Priscilla pearls. The ladies, they loved Priscilla pearls. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you. Folks, if you would like to hear that song again, it is on Mary Garvey's compilation, Herring Our Joy. We'll hear from Mary later on in the set. I want to thank you, Mark and Molly, for joining us. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank a few folks that have made the Fisher Poets Gathering possible this year and in the past. For one, the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicki Stringfellow for their surprising and very generous support, Oregon Sea Grant, KMUN, and the Tillicum Foundation, and there's many more to come. Many thank yous. Thank you all for being here. If you are looking for ways to support each performer, they're out there. The lineup is below on the YouTube link and on the website. Check out In the Tote and seek out the artist's work and support them if you can. If you have not yet been to a Duncan Berry workshop, I hope you get to go. We'll welcome him this evening for a performance. Duncan hails from the mouth of the Salmon River, where it meets the sea at the center of the Cascade Head UN Biosphere Reserve, UN Biosphere Reserve on Oregon's north central coast. fished salmon out of the Columbia in the 70s. And like I said, does workshops. The workshops are about making fish art in his home studio. And he's also spending time working on climate-related projects. So thanks for doing the workshop today, Duncan. I hope you get to do many more and many of the attendees get to join. I'll pass the mic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Elma. Good to be in the Fisher Poets community again, something we look forward to all winter, especially in the dark of winter. I'm going to jump right in with a poem called Salmon Walking, which really, in this time of invasions and pandemics, it's nice to know that some of these traditions that we all love continue on, that have been going on for thousands of years. So this is a poem from my time in St. Mary's up the Yukon at our fish buying station. It's called Salmon Walking. These people of the far north, these Yupik, they have been the salmon eaters since the mile-high lenses of clear blue ice melted away and their salty brethren, the salmon, returned to the rivers, returned to their ancestral waters with their bellies full of oils and flesh colored like dawn. Into their weirs and dip nets and onto their bone hooks they came, filleted to hang in fish houses dressed only in the north wind and smoke. Fuel for the dark days of winter, salmon becoming humans, humans becoming salmon, walking. I grasped the hand of one of these river people boarding his gillnet skiff on the banks of the great river of the Quipaq, Yukon, 80 miles from the Bering Sea, 1,900 miles from its headwaters. John Tinker Jr. drifts gillnets through these waters with his 9-year-old son, who introduces himself as Stephen Curry Jr., the three-point guy. We run on the flat, milky waters to Pilot Station, load the net, wait on the sandbar for the opener. Big sky stretching taut from one flat horizon to the other. Eagles split the silence with their keening. Ravens answer with a deep-throated chuckling, knowing that it's all humorous, this life we've been given. Floats and nets flying into the air, stretching at right angles to the current, engine in full reverse, net set, drifting quietly towards the sea. Floats dance as the summer run chum dog keta feel the bite of nylon, swim their last free strokes. We lean backwards, fingers deep in the mesh, pulling hard, and they come over the gunnel, tiger stripe, hook-nosed, empty-bellied, single-minded and intent till the last moment to return to the reds of their mothers and their fathers. How many generations since those first Yupik drove their bows of their bidarkas onto the alluvial bars of this river? How many surging runs of salmon? How many spring floods? How many glaciers spitting gravel and milky water from their mouths? Waves of these first peoples combing these same waters, bones laid flat now in the frozen ground. Through it all has run the red thread of salmon and footsteps of the fisher folk on the banks of the Quipaq, salmon becoming human, humans becoming salmon, walking. So I'm going to just jump into the next one here. I did want to do a shout out to this great publication that's just come out, Jan's Mall Life. Thank you, Cannon Beach Arts Association and others. This piece, which I'm dedicating to my sweet wife, Melanie, of 50 years, is called Selkie. And when I was reflecting on Fisher Poets, I was thinking that this is an event really based in love, love of the sea, love of fish, love of our boats, love of each other. And so this is a love poem to someone who's been in my life for 50 years. Again, it's called Selkie. Here, like so many wild shadowed coasts of the north where chill waters are bounded by ancient rock, is the place where the legend of the Selkie was born, of the beautiful dark-eyed feminine seal creature who frequents these shorelines, head just above the surface, eyes darting, quietly watching men and women come and go upon the sea. Once in a lifetime, one of these kind is so drawn to a landsman that she sheds her skin, taking the form of a woman emerging naked and beautiful and dark as the sea itself. And this is a legend I know to be true, for she has found me, this true life Selkie, watching me as I left each day to go out on the broad back of the sea, She who buried her skin after coming ashore, standing upright at my side, and all these many years left it there, hidden high above the tide line, loving her landsman, but never far from the roaring rumble of surf, salt still laced in her hair like some crystalline memory of before. She who goes to the sea to breathe, she who is more of the water than the land, she who is playful and flexible and curious and knowing, she is an embodiment of this wild northern sea itself, running deep, pierced by light, and seductive in the same way that the sea draws us to board our ships for that liquid planet within a planet where we feel more at home than on land itself. And this is how my Selkie is for me, different and mysterious like liquid, both gentle and strong, and I feel more at home in the sanctuary of her than anywhere else in this world. And I strive to be worthy of her and her love, knowing that the fluid freedom and comfort of her beloved sea is always calling her, me striving to match this salty sisterhood with the simple and absolute love of a landsman who has been gifted this dark-haired and wild Selkie by the sea. Thank you all, and there she is, my wild Selkie.
Wow. Thank you,
you
Duncan,
all.
for sharing that special love story with us. Congratulations on 50 years. And I want to move on as we have a full schedule this evening. I also need to say that I misspoke, and I wanted to thank Tom and Vicky Springfield for their generous support. I said Stringfellow, so thanks for bearing with my self-correction here. And now I'll welcome another Astoria local. Hobe Kytr is coming from a background as a folklorist, historian, songwriter, and he transitioned from museum work to running a fishery office for the last 14 years of his career. And this is his 25th year with the gathering. So each and every year that we've gathered at the end of February, Hobe's been there, and I'm excited to welcome him back one more time to Fisher Poets. Take it away. Thank you.
Good evening. This is something of a novella encompassed in 4 verses. The setting is a small fishing village on the Lower Columbia River in the Washington Shore in the late 1940s. The cannery had closed, and then word came that the river packet would no longer come delivering the mail. It's called The Last Packet out of Pillar Rock. She caught the last packet out of Pillar Rock. The mailboat doesn't stop there anymore. Moved across the river down the Alder Brook. Got herself a job in the store. Now fishing isn't easy, but it was his life. He thought he shouldn't have to choose between his living and his wife. But she caught the last packet out of Pillar Rock, left him standing on the shore. He'd been a fisherman since childhood, just like his uncle and his dad. And it hardly made a difference that he understood. He never really meant to make her sad. He climbed up to the net loft and started knitting that. Maybe keeping busy would help him to forget. But he'd been a fisherman since childhood. It was the only life he'd ever had. She was young and kind of pretty. He brought her to a place she'd never known. But she had grown up in the city. She never felt so all alone. It's not she didn't love him, it was just so lonely there. How could she go another night with a heart filled with despair? She was young and kinda pretty. Now she set out on her own. Soon it would be time to hang his gear. Trammels, aprons, back wall on the line. But what strange salvage was it tied him here? All his days were strung with twine. It seemed the rhythm of his life was just a bit too stark. She wanted no more lonely nights while he drifted in the dark. Soon it would be time to hang his gear. He knew she'd never change her mind. She got the last packet out of pillar rug, left him standing on the shore, left him standing on the shore. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've never heard that one, and I want to hear it again, so I'm going to have to dig up a recording or ask you for one, Hobe. Thanks again for being here, folks. We have a first-time Fisher Poets performer up next, so those of you in the chat, let's blow it up and welcome Keith Wilson. Keith is calling in from Hailey, Idaho, but is from Naknek, Alaska. He's been set netting there for salmon in the district, Naknek-Kvichak district, with his family for 26 years. He's an ultra runner, running coach, teacher, and the author of a recently published A Road Out of Naknek. And you can also find him at Wilson's Wild Salmon. Again, he lives in Hailey, Idaho, with his wife and unborn son. So let's see some exclamation points and cheerleading in the chat for a first-time performer. And welcome, Keith.
Thanks. I know everybody's excited to get back to Astoria, but I'm happy to be joining for the first time. I'll be reading a short excerpt from my book, from a story that took place about 10 years ago. It's from set netting the Kvichak, and I was set netting the Kvichak 10 years before that. I'll probably be set netting the Kvichak 10 years from now. This was a night where we caught over 20,000 pounds of fish, and we were down to the last 6,000 pounds on board, plus the nets. So we were as low in the water as it gets. Fortunately, it was dead calm that night. Then we got to the tender, and they were full. So we had to wait for a new tender, which wasn't going to come for another several hours. And as we waited, the weather came in, the waves got bigger, and where I'll start reading is where we were starting to offload our fish. There is a siren on the other side of the vessel. I hear it over the wind and waves and men shouting. My brother freezes. The crane operator disappears. The attention of the crew is on the skiff on the other side of the tender, where 2 men have gone overboard. Our skiff remains lopsided. It rocks and splashes in the waves, and splashes into the stern are bigger now. Hey, Dad yells up to anyone who can hear. We got to get more fish out of here or we're going to swamp too. The scale from the crane is still lowered into our skiff, and I start clipping the next brailer to it. My brother is frozen. Luke, I say, brailer, come on. I can't hear what Dad and the skipper are shouting back and forth through the wind, but Dad starts untying the stern line. Keith, he shouts, untie. Skipper says we're going into calmer water. I release us. The water dumps into the stern. Hey, we're sinking, Dad yells. We're sinking. Fish float toward me. The motor is underwater. I've untied, but the line is still in my hands, sliding through them. I tighten my grip and I feel it burn through my gloves. I'm bailing, Luke says. I know he doesn't mean the bucket when he crawls to the side and climbs aboard the tender. Metal crashes against metal, splashes between vessels tower above me. Waves keep dumping into the skiff. My hands burn as they tighten harder around the line as I slip into the dark. In my peripheral vision, I see Dad climb aboard the tender too. I'm alone in the skiff, drifting away, fish floating against my hips. Dad and Luke's voices are somewhere in the lights. Luke says, screw the skiff, Keith, get up here. Dad says, damn it, that's my son. I keep drifting into the darkness, and for a moment, the waves are silent, almost still. My mind must have gone black. I don't remember tying the tangle into the net, into the mess on the floor, holding the skiff against the current. But I look down, and it's there. It's not a bowline or a keg knot, even a granny knot. It's a wad of line woven back and forth and around itself in some kind of mess that's somehow holding. I've done what I can, and now I need to get out of the skiff. I step toward the tender, but my ankle is wrapped in the line. My face splashes into the floor. I taste salt. Water pours down my neck. The bail bucket floats by me and disappears. I flap and kick, but it's futile. The more I move, the more the line tightens. Water keeps pouring toward me. Water is all I see. Now I realize, surrounded in the dark, that I've come face to face with the tide. A road out of Naknek, Alaskan salmon fishing, long distance running, and life according to the tide. Thank you.
Wow. Keith, welcome to Fisher Poets. Doing
Thanks,
it
I
right.
appreciate that.
As a fellow set netter, I have major heebie-jeebies listening, and I'm glad to see that you're here with us this evening and made it through that experience. So look forward to reading the book. And thanks again. Whew. I gotta relax after being stressed for Keith. Okay, I want to include a few thank yous. Again, the Oregon Community Foundation's Patricia Friedland Fund has been a longtime supporter of the gathering, and we're grateful again this year for their support. And Carol Brill and Douglas Booth also bringing us support this year for the 25th annual. So thank you so much to them. Next, I want to welcome my friend and Fisher poet, Kat Murphy. Kat's calling in from Port Townsend, Washington. She owns and operates the beautiful FV Grace, a power troller in Southeast Alaska, as well as her own direct marketing business called Catfish Salmon Co., where you can buy delicious cans and more lovely, fresh, well-treated salmon. So thanks, Kat, for returning to read with us. We're excited to hear you.
Thanks, Elma. This piece is called Two Homes, Two Hearts. How do you put into words what should only be felt? There's a flower drifting past the boat in the middle of this deep blue sea. It makes me think of home and of blackberry season, lettuce shooting out of the ground, peas weaving their vines, and nasturtiums overflowing. I look out on deck and see waves and whitecaps and foam, lines shaking with fish ready to be caught. I am alone in a world of sea and sky. This is also home. For me, Alaska is sunrises and sunsets blurring together into one endless day stretched out. Expansive and overwhelming, Alaska is too big to contain, ever overflowing, raw and unfiltered. It is well-organized chaos. It holds the wild places that I love. Port Townsend is the steady plodding of time, the rhythms of day-to-day living, the clock ticking and me knowing what day of the week it is. It holds the long dark hours and the deep sleep. It is peaceful and methodical and sometimes hard to stuff myself back into. It holds the people that I love frozen in time. After 4 months away, I struggle trying to find the words to describe all that a summer fishing season holds. So I put on the hat of entertainer, vivacious storyteller, performer of tricks and jokes. I tell the people what they want to hear. I make them laugh and sometimes cringe. Fascinated, captivated, I hold them in the palm of my hand. I am powerful. I am in control. But they make room for me, create space for the transformation from fisherman to cat. Graciously accepting whatever form of me happens to appear in September, lovingly breaking the tension of transition, they listen and laugh, politely applauding at the end of my performance. They wait patiently. Translating my summers and trying to understand theirs feels like a full cup of water that I knock over and spill onto the floor. The words seep into the carpet. I am one person and two people. The distance between is becoming too vast to bridge. I can hear the waves slapping against the hull as I drive the Grace forward. I try and go forward with the water as a sea of flowers floating. Looking down, I run my hands through their petals, but they're chanterelles, smooth and bright on the fall forest floor. I sense movement and look up. The troll poles are shaking with fish, but it's my teeth chattering. My body shaking with cold as I sit on my surfboard staring out at the waves as the snow falls around me, melting into the sea. Another wave, this time crashing over the bow. It's the Omni Rip. I'm caught. I need to turn around. I need to go back, but I can't get through. The petals are too thick. I've lost all control over the situation. The raven on the bow says two, and I yell back one. My voice becomes snow, becomes blackberries, wraps like river rock around ego and self. The raven says harmony. Let me begin again. How do you put into words what can only be felt? There's a flower drifting past the boat in the middle of this deep blue sea. The memories start to trickle like water over smooth stones, told out of order as they are felt rather than remembered. Listening to a favorite song in the deep peace of the morning run out of the anchorage, running day and night nonstop, trying to get the boat south before the gale, a bright moon on a still ocean lighting the way. One breakdown after another. I'm covered in soot in my engine room, exasperated. A buddy hands me a cold beer afterwards. No words, just understanding. The best day of fishing I've ever had, and the boat refusing to turn over the next morning. Collecting beach asparagus under a rare bright sun and a piercing blue sky, hot sand, sunburn. We are 8 days in, 700 miles traveled, and a football field's distance from home. Anchored outside the breakwater, waiting for the wind to come down as the clock strikes midnight. The metallic, manic smell of king salmon on deck, the smell of money. Their silver scales sparkling on my town jeans. How did those get there? Tequila shots with the unofficial mayor of Shearwater. Did that actually happen? Rafting up to a friend's boat in the dark that I haven't seen all season. The warm light of my sodium illuminating their smiling faces as they catch my lines. Serenity, fatigue, anxiety, fear, joy, grief, perseverance, desperation, love, loss, anger, peace, awe, trickling over smooth stones, down the river, out to sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks so much for sharing. Yay, cheerleaders. Happy to see you there. I hope folks, we really look forward to gathering all together next year, hopefully, in the streets of Astoria. This next performer tells me that there's no place they'd rather be this time of year than at the Fisher Poets Gathering, virtual or not. And I'm excited to welcome Larry Kaplan, a fellow from the Nutmeg State of Connecticut. Larry is joining us from Essex, recently returned from the UK, and his poignant songs of the maritime and fishing trade are known, loved, and sung widely. And I'm going to let him give us a taste himself this evening with his beautiful music. So thanks so much. Here you go, Larry.
Thanks, Elma. It's really good to be back at Fisher Poets. This is my 6th year, and hope many more others. In 1859, on the Irish Sea, 800 lives were lost, 133 ships were lost during the Royal Charter Gale, which was one of the most devastating gales of its time. And that prompted Robert Fitzroy, Captain Robert Fitzroy, to start thinking about ways to warn mariners of impending storms. Fitzroy is best known for being the captain of the Beagle, Darwin's vessel, but his life was really dedicated to improving conditions and safety on the seas around England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. He was a prolific inventor as well. And that led to what became what is now known as a shipping forecast, which on the BBC radio you'll hear 4 times a day, which gives you information on about 31 sectors around those waters. And it really is probably the oldest organized weather forecast system in the world. This is my attempt to familiarize others with the different names of those sectors. I don't expect to ever learn this myself, so I have the lyrics in front of me. It's called the Shipping Forecast. Plymouth, Portland, Dover, White, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bight, Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey, Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Viking, Soul for miles, Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's line, both the Archers then to time, Trafalgar, Hebrides call out, you sailing ships now come about. Malin, Rockall, 40 shout, please turn around and ne'er go out. Well, the shipping forecast tells you well of fairest breeze or deadly swell, of southern winds or Arctic cold, from waters deep to breaking shoals. Plymouth, Portland, Dover, Wide, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bight, these names were given to our seas so mariners know where they be. Well, you must learn the Beaufort scale to tell fresh breeze from the bloody gale, for what begins as a gentle breeze may soon bring boatmen to their knees. Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey, these names were given to our seas so mariners know where they be. Those Viking waves are cold and steep at 60 north and 4 knot east, but should you dare lay down to sleep, you'll wake to swells near 70 feet. Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Viking, Soul for miles, these names were given to our seas so mariners know where they be. If the veering winds bring a gentle breeze, they'll back again and stir the sea. Too far from land you best dare not, cyclonic gales are 80 knots. Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's line, both the Archers then to time, these names were given to our seas so mariners know where they be. I've never seen the Devil's Hole, there east of Dundee, far below. Deep trenches hide the seabed floor, where vessels fall, then rise no more. Malin, Rockall, 40 shout, Trafalgar, Hebrides, then out. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. So the forecast tells us well of goodly breeze or deadly swell. And while this still sounds strange to me, wise sailors know why it must be. Plymouth, Portland, Dover wide, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bide, Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey, Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Viking, Soul for miles, Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's Line, both the Achies then to Tyne, Trafalgar, Hebrides call out, you sailing ships now come about, Malin, Ruckle, 40 shout, please turn around and ne'er go out.
Beautiful, Larry. Thank you so much for coming back yet again and sharing with us. We love hearing that and appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
I want to celebrate this beautiful flower that's blooming behind me from a little bulb that my mom sent me about a month ago. Look at that. And I want to welcome another Connecticut, original Connecticut reader. Dano Quinn is up next. Although never actually having worked as a commercial fisherman, Dano is a 40-year career mariner who snuck into the gathering under the radar in 2006 and has stuck with us since then. Dano emceed earlier this evening. I want to thank him for that and pass the mic.
Am I there?
Yep, go ahead, Dano.
Okay, hey everybody, welcome. Yeah, Elma, I was going to start by thanking you for doing MC work and also Amanda for making this all run so smoothly, and for everybody in the background that we're not seeing here but that has worked so hard to get us all together for this special evening here in chilly February weekend. So if you know my work, you know that a 5-minute timeline is kind of tough for me because most of my stories tend to ramble on a little bit longer than that. But I've got a shorter one here. It's about the earlier days of my seagoing career when I was working on big sailing ships. And what I knew when I started writing this was that I wanted to describe the sea state and conditions as they built up in a storm. This one's called For Better or Worse. We was 3 days out of Boston when the wind began to freshen. I was the rookie second mate. And to make a good impression, I nipped down to the captain's door and gave it a couple of raps. The breeze should be piping up, sir. Time to throw in a reef, perhaps? Nah, says he from behind the door in a tone that was clipped and terse. Let her run. She loves a snorter. Call me if it gets any worse. Well, get worse it did. The swells piled up. The breeze grew into a bluster. We all climbed into our oilskins as white horses began to muster. I jumped down the ladder. I knocked again at Captain's door. Said, sir, she's getting rougher. It's hard to hold a steady course. We're really starting to suffer. Hand your topsails and outer jibs, quips he as if reading a verse. Throw a deep reef in the mainsail. Call if it gets any worse. Well, we sweated hard, got her done, but that breeze just kept on making. A squall swept in and laid us down. The growlers started breaking. I jumps down the ladder again and dispensed with the cheerful greeting. Cap, I hollers at that varnished door. We're taking an awful beating. Go ahead and strike the foresail, he rumbles with a muttered curse. Set up your lifelines fore and aft. And call if it gets any worse. Before long, she's pumping force 8. The spindrifts commencing to streak. An icy spray was soaking us down, and the wind was a steady shriek. Sir, shouts I, she's a fresh gale now. We're still holding too much sail. The sea's a boiling fury, and we're soaking the lee pinrail. A gale, you say? Too much sail? Better watch she don't take a header. Re-rig with main trysail and storm jib, and call me when it gets better.
Awesome. I feel like there's more of a story there that I hope to hear completely for one day. And I want to welcome next Mary Garvey. Thank you, Dano. Mary grew up on the Columbia River and has been familiar adjacently to the maritime culture all her life. Now a dedicated songwriter, Mary's songs tell tradition and new tales, a lot of them influenced from her time in Newfoundland. And I'm going to welcome Mary. I think she's going to sing for us, so I'm excited to have her.
Thank you. I'll sing the shrimp boat Lulu Bell, and it's about the latest hurricane down in Louisiana. So this stuff is so universal, is it not? Okay. My pappy said, my son, your name is Lafayette. There hasn't been a hurricane that's compromised us yet. So grab some Cajun courage and pull your gumboots on. Anything we have today, tomorrow may be gone. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Once I had a shrimp boat, her name was Micheline. Now I see her in the mud, all smashed to smithereens. She used to be a beauty, but now she is a wreck. She's nothing left but broken glass and splinters for a deck. And once I had a partner, his name was Jimmy Brown. He said, I just can't get no more, I'll get a job in town. I'll camp out in the bayou and live on rice and beans. I'll take whatever you can catch and sell in New Orleans. Here's to you and to me, to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. But still I have another boat, her name is Lulu Bell. Right now she is an eyesore, her engine still works well. With patchwork and a bit of paint, she'll soon be good as new. And she and I will show you all what Cajun pluck can do. Trouble makes the world go round and then go round some more. Maybe I'll be rich again, or maybe I'll be poor, but I'll stomp in my old gumboots and salvage what I can. I'll live and die as I was born, a son of Louisiana. Here's to you and to me, to all us Cajun men. And if you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Thanks, and you recognize the tune, it's traditional. That was fun.
Thank you so much, Mary. Love a song of resilience in these hard times we're all having. So thanks for inspiring us all to get back up. And we're going to move right along here. I'm excited to welcome my neighbor to the north, Kathy Stack, calling in from Salt Spring Island, BC. Kathy worked on a tender during herring and salmon for over 30 years, traveling the coast of BC and up into southeast Alaska. And I think we're going to hear some music. Is that right, Kathy?
That's right.
Okay, I'll pass it to you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'd like to sing you a song about Ripple Rock, which was a ship-killing menace in the middle of Seymour Narrows before 1958. And I've been through there hundreds of times through Seymour Narrows at all stages of the tide, and it's really nasty when the tide's running. Whirlpools and overfalls galore, and I can't imagine what it was like with a rock in the middle. So I'm so grateful to the fellows who blew it up. They took 3 years with 2 shifts of miners working day and night to tunnel down through the island under the channel and up into the rock, and then fill it with dynamite. So this is for them. Every time I go through Seymour Narrows, take my hat off to those dynamite men who risk their lives to make it safe to travel for sailors and fishermen. Like Lorelei, it lurked beneath the water. It tore the bellies from 100 ships. It swallowed more than 100 sailors among the whirlpools and the tidal rips. They blew the top off a ripple rock. They blew the top off a ripple rock. Folks in Campbell River felt the shock. They blew the top off a ripple rock. For 1,000 nights and 1,000 dark days, miners blasted their weary way. They tunneled down through Maud Island, under the channel where the Twin Peaks lay. They filled Old Rip with high explosive, with just one chance to blow it away. They waited till the tide was racing and held their breath on that April day. They blew the top off a ripple rock. They blew the top off a ripple rock. Folks in Campbell River felt the shock. They blew the top off a ripple rock. With a mighty roar, the rock erupted, shooting pieces a mile in the air. We all cheered the grinning miners. That menace is no longer there. They blew the top off a ripple rock. They blew the top off a ripple rock. Folks in Campbell River felt the shock, 'cause they blew the top off a ripple rock. They blew the top, they blew the top, they blew the top off a ripple, ripple, ripple. They blew the top off a ripple rock. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you live next year in Astoria. Thank you, Amanda and Jamie and Elma.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that chorus is going to be, I'm going to be singing it in my head tomorrow, and I really appreciate that. I look forward to hearing it again in person.
Great. Me too.
And I'm going to move on. We're going to welcome Dave Densmore, a longtime fisher poet who grew up, born and raised in Alaska on Kodiak Island and then along the Aleutian chain. And we're going to give it a go here on Dave's technology. Here we go. Welcome. Oops, I can't hear you yet. Dave, I'm going to come back to you unless... Okay, I'm going to go to Peter and welcome Dave right after Peter. Stand by one, please. Peter Munro is a recently retired fisheries biologist and remains an actively practicing poet at open mics around the area. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Elma, and thank you to all the organizers, and especially thank you, all you listeners, for your precious attention. This piece is just one poem. It's called In the Office of Ballard Oil, Drinking Coffee with the Old Timers. Back in the king crab heyday, Any fool could fill a boat. That's how they talked down to the oil docks, those old school Norwegians, jawing as they hawked up stories by the coffee urn, tales tooled to run more smoothly than diesels. They idled their lies in Norsk, sagas fueled by weather hammering vessels, 80-knot winds driving 30-foot peelers. The taller the wave, the tougher the sailor. In my off season, I'd steam down and heave too among those crabby bastards. Retirement and age had rendered them peeved. Moored to folding chairs, they'd mustered to grumble how modern fishing aggrieved them. Iron men, wooden boats, and myth, the usual bullshit. Not hard to believe if you swill truths bottled in fifths, industrial crabs slaughter north of False Pass, translations from Norski blown up my ass. Now run aground in Northwest Seattle, they built epics out of their lies, rivalries revisited, old battles rejoined, and old losses revised. Not one word how an Akavit bottle put the Solvig J on the rocks. Launched just after the divorce, she'd settled on her side, awash, Ballard locks still in sight, steel skin torn for a flooding tide, and Solvig's ex-husband with no place to hide. My scalds nobbled mugs of heat, their knuckles worked thick with arthritis and cold, histories written in roughly buckled fingers and in scars where skin folds had been bitten by steel when a shackle failed or rebar busted. My bards recited their scolds, shacked block and tackle, low quota, rust chipped in shipyards. Bragi Bodison hove up. He heeled to starboard across the office, then chewed on the coffee he'd poured. Snorri stirless and through lines and hobbled after Bodison. His new hip, socket, and ball still gave him some trouble. Nothing the right wrench wouldn't whip, and nothing like a standard day fabled from the Bering Sea. Ragnar dragged on a cigarette, exhaled, quibble. Nobody grinds bait that way. Brags ebbed and flowed, stately as tides. Tobacco smoke flavored silences after each sailor spoke. Down sounding their dark and myth-charted grounds, the coffee urn ticked. No sonar pinged so elegantly, nor pierced those drowned domains where smelters melt kroner, where trolls hammer anvils, and where silver-crowned fish speak Old Norse. A new story rumbled to life. Pistons revved up to pound, throttles opened wide to glory, and 7 shots of buoy line coiled by hand, vertebrae wrecked, a sailor lost on land. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for being here. I heard that you're representing a harbor that some say is Fraserburgh behind you. So looking good.
Oh, that George Wilson's probably watching.
Correct. Excellent. I am going to go ahead and try Dave Densmore one more time. See if we can hear him this time.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, you're good, Dave. Thank you, Peter.
All right.
And you're on the mic, Dave.
All right. This first one I'm going to read, I was sitting around this winter and thinking about being on the boat and so on. And I got to thinking about how it doesn't matter what you fish, where you fish, or any of that fisherman, a real fisherman, gets a real affinity for his boat. So I kind of wrote a little love poem to it called Another Day. Her old engine rumbles to life. Oil, water, fluids, all been checked. Then up the ladder, back to the galley, out on the well-worn deck. Wheelhouse, my true comfort zone. Readied, depth sounder and radar softly glow. Running lights on, signal my intent. VHF, channel 16, turn down low. Maybe pause for one more cup of coffee while the engine comes up to heat. Lean against the counter, cup in hand, feeling the engine's soothing beat. Finally out on deck, moving past, make loose the tie-up lines, free in boat and sail from land, and all that there ever binds. Back in the wheelhouse, ease into reverse, and gently back her out of the stall. Spin the wheel, play clutch and throttle. Another round is about to fall. As we slip out the bay, can't help but smile at the gentle rise and fall of swell. Engine rumble, stove's warmth, hot coffee and cup, all in my world as well. Glancing at the radar's glow, occasional spray from the sidelight shine. The throb, the motion, the sounds and smells, this sum of my life suits just fine. Sometimes I just have to caress the bright work and the worn spots on the wheel. Simply shut the autopilot off and steer by hand. So complete connection with her I can feel. I love the throbbing power beneath my feet and the oneness with a trusted boat that surrounds. Engine, natural boat sounds, or clink of galley crockery, all seems a love song in every sound. Hell, I don't seek to romanticize this life. It's hard and costly, it's true. But one thing I understand, lucky is a man who loves what he chose. Baiting hooks or setting pots, whatever the seasons brought to hand. Though alone, I'm never lonely out here, the way I always am on land. Near shore or far out at sea, working alone or with a crew. Fair weather or foul, I'm proud to be one of the chosen few. That wasn't a more quick one to read. I've been asked lots of times, how do you write those poems? Where do they come from? I have no idea where they come from. I try to buy expensive pens because that maybe I get a little better quality poem on them. But I wrote this to kind of explain the whole thing. It's called Fish and Poems. The run's coming strong. Once again, our hold is getting full. As I watch for fish, lay out the net, I suddenly feel pen and paper pull. I'm too busy, don't have time right now to scratch out another poem. I'll have to wait till season's end when I'm idling around at home. So I call my skiff man on the radio to adjust his end of the net. Bow the boat straight to the beach. But this will be a damn good set. The engine purrs and net's holding right. It just doesn't get any better than this. But those rhyming words continue to dance as I watch oncoming fish. Those rhyming words keep nagging me till I go fetch my paper and pen as I watch fish and net with knee balance pad. Another poem from my pen begins. So there I am on that flying bridge, trying to fish and still capture a rhyming line. Cursed or blessed, I can't really tell. But I do love this life of mine. Well, that's the way it goes when everything is going right. But sometimes they come amidst raging storm or even darkest night. Well, that's the way it goes. Oh, no. Yep, it's maybe rough and windy. The weak fish run not even showing. When words will come I have to catch, they'll be forever lost in their going. That damn boat may be bucking and rolling, hard running currents trying to change my set shape. Hell, sometimes it's a challenge just to stick and stay when fishing out there on those capes. Driving rain and spray run off my rain gear. Feels like I'm standing under a fire hose. Even my eyebrows seem to droop as water runs off my beard and nose. And you guessed it, wind and rain. That's when a poem will start to call. Hard to write on soggy paper, and glasses are no damn good at all. What would I change about this life? Well, aside from the inevitable arrival of fall, marking the end of my fishing season, not one single damn thing at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Great to hear you. Longtime Fisher Poet. For those of you who haven't been to FisherPoets.org, I welcome you to visit after tonight's readings for more material and features from In the Tote, which is a compilation of those who have performed for a long time. And before we move on to Geno, I'm going to just carry on with my thank yous. I want to make sure we mention the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through it, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund specifically. And I want to thank very much all of those who have emceed so far and will after this set, and Amanda and Jamie who are helping us behind the scenes here. And someone else who has been a big part of the Fisher Poets gathering behind the scenes was Mick Hassan, who was our in-person sound tech for many years and passed recently, sadly. So I just wanted to bring his name up this evening as we honor him, even though we are virtual this year. And we'll miss him sorely whenever we get to be back in person, and his skills that he brought to the festival. So want to thank Mick for all his hard work contributing, and may he rest in peace. Okay, up next, I'm welcoming Geno Leach. Geno's joining us, I think, from the Broderick living room here, but coming from between Cape Disappointment and Dismal Niche in Chinook, Washington. He's a longtime Fisher Poet, working, I think, in the Columbia out of Astoria, but we'll see what he shares with us this evening. So thank you, Geno. Passing the mic to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this poem here is called Herring Scales, and I wrote this for Smitty Smith. Harrison Smitty Smith was one of the Hall of Famers that passed on a few years ago from Fisher Poets. He was down in Arizona. He got wiped out on a motorcycle, and I heard about that. I think he was in a body cast or something in Tucson, but I figured he needed a laugh, so I composed this poem called Herring Scales. It looks back at one of my seasons in Togiak, and I don't know, the rest is history. So here we go, Herring Scales. Well, they're clinging to the cross trees, plastered to the mast, splattered on the flying bridge and baking on the stack. Airballed on the bulwarks, caked around the rail. We're bucking back to Knack-Neck, festooned with herring scales. Well, this season was a bust, kept our losing streak intact. Yeah, our record's 0-20 up there in Togiak. Well, if the Japanese eat herring roe and the French escargot snails, how come there ain't a gourmet market for all those herring scales? Well, I'm closer to those herring scales and to my next of kin. Those dime-sized, transparent blisters are glued right to my skin. They're whole bone in my backside, hitchhiking in my socks, flying first class on my earlobes, sailing steerage in my crotch. Well, I paid off in rope yarns, flew back from King Salmon, had a romantic coming home night, bottle of Bordeaux, a bubble bath, love songs by Barry White. Well, I failed to use precaution. A peculiar strain of STD prevailed. I gave my loving wife a dose of Togiak herring scales. Well, my life already sucked, but it went from bad to worse. I even considered throwing in with a Holy Roller Church. I was manning the pumps on my sinking existence and asking myself, why me? And all the while, trouble was brewing in the deep, dark south of my anatomy. Well, bold black letters proclaimed proctologist on the chicken-wired frosted glass. 2 seconds later, it was bent over a chair. Had a programmed up my ass. Well, old Doc was about as gentle as a Dutch Harbor pile buck, but he really knew the score. He reared back in his flask and simply asked, "You ever fish herring and togiak before?" Well, my wife took off and left me. My life's done hit the rocks. Yeah, I'm living underneath the bridge in a double wide appliance box. I stare out at the shipping channel and think how life ain't fair cause. If herring scales were pennies, I'd be a billionaire. Thank you and God bless. Great to see all y'all. Okay.
Thank you, Geno. What a way to get rich off herring scales. I think that I am up next. Pretty sure, yeah. My name's Elma. I've been the MC, but I've also joining with a little set of my own here. I've been a Bristol-based set netter for the last 10 years or so, and letter writing has been a big part of my off-the-grid fishing summers since I started, and many of them get written only in my head because our hands are so busy all the time. And I decided to put a few to paper here in the off season, so I'm just going to read a couple of those this evening that I wish I had written in season. Dear Mo, how sweet to know that you're here in the Bay. I hope it welcomes you as it did me years ago now. I know you are in great hands with Melanie, Billy, Celeste, but I also wish we could host you here in Ugashik. Ugashik is so forgotten. Sometimes I feel like we hardly have a biologist. It is kind of nice, in a way. No one expects much from us, especially us set netters. The fish have not come, but I know they will. XX. Dear Lily, I think we could all serve to talk about more than the weather. It's so easy, this topic, of course. We have been training our whole lives to focus on this integral chatter, both in line at the grocery store, on the phone with our dads, and now, for me, at the galley table, on deck, or even more so, in the lines of every industry publication, of which there are, shockingly, many. It's important, of course, the weather. I mean, it's important to us because it tells us what we can and can't do, what we will and won't catch, when we'll make a run or not. But remarkably, it's even an important topic to someone who doesn't leave their house to work or even to play. Anyway, it's universal, you know what I mean? We all sleep, wake, eat, cry, laugh, call our friends, and flirt with our friends under the same sky. Time zones, geography aside, you know what I mean. I think this is nice, given the widening divides in every other corner of society. In that way, I suppose, saying absolutely nothing while blabbering on about the weather is nice. It's nice to know that we share something, at least. But good God, doesn't anyone have anything else to say? I'm open to good questions if you're willing to share. Let me know what you're asking folks at the cafe, what they are saying back. Bon appetit. Dear Dad, I have never seen so many fish in my life. I know my life is short compared to all the salty old-timers out here, but even they are saying that. I don't think, overall, it's more fish than any of these previous good years, but they are coming in differently. The normally muddy, ugly brown, brackish river is shining with jumpers and little dollops of that beautiful scale shine. It feels like they are rushing, the fish. I am worried they are rushing to get upriver during these cooler days so they don't end up in an overheated, shallow riverbed like a few years ago when so many died. I wonder if these are the 2- and 3-year fish that were reds and fried during that year. I can't help but think it's us that's making them rush. Us humans and our trucks and capitalism-fueled steamships and space alien CEOs going to Mars. I am sad, wondering if rushing is new to the salmon. If one day they just moseyed upriver once at a time, sometime between May and October. Just some things I'm thinking about. It really is spectacular to see. Are you off rushing somewhere? How is the weather? Love you. Dear Maggie, am I missing the berries? That's my biggest worry. Well, really, my biggest worry is if a greenhorn will get their foot in a line and go overboard with the net, or if the skiffs out front will drag anchor while I sleep and write to you, or if the funny noise coming from the outboard is a human-made problem or just happens to a 10-year-old outboard. I guess these are the anxieties pumping up my adrenals with air, but they are giving me the energy to stay up and write to you after a long tide. That's good, right? How absurd that I choose to live in the berry capital of the world and then choose to leave when they're in season. Then again, how absurd that I'm here participating in the world's last great wild salmon run and harvest, only to be worried about missing another phenomena someplace else. I hope you are out there in the valley getting buckets full. I'll be home soon, ready to trade berries for fish. We all miss you. Thanks. That was my letter set this evening. And I'm excited to welcome Sierra Golden. Sierra is a former Southeast Seine deckhand who dreams of a Bristol Bay set net site. She's currently got a desk job in the Methow Valley where she lives with her partner and young son. Sierra has a compilation of poems and writings that I encourage everyone to check out as well. That's a staple on my shelf. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Sierra.
Thanks, Elma. I loved those letters. My internet has also suddenly become slightly unstable, so I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and let me know if I disappear. I'm going to quickly read 3 poems. The first one is called Leftovers, and yeah. In the red rust of morning, a salmon fisherman mends his seine, hardening his hands stitch by stitch. In the galley, the cook scrambles eggs, tosses the shells to a rising tide. A circling hummingbird touches its slender beak to the trash. The skipper's kids hide and seek behind a stack of crab pots, and the shipwright urges boat work, new caulking with pine-soaked oakum. A wet mop slops across the sky, and the rain begins again. At dinner time, the harbor master meets a boat by the crooked pier, she and the evergreen trees dripping in the gathering dark, while her family says grace around a yellow cedar table with their eyes closed. I want to say thank you to the organizers and the MCs and everyone watching. It's really wonderful to be back here, and I look forward to, like everyone, hopefully next year in person. The second poem, I wrote the first draft of it at a FisherPoets gathering in Astoria in a workshop with Joseph Millar. And the other good thing to know about this poem is that it's inspired in part by Hollis Jennings, who is a skipper in Southeast. And she once said to me, one of the best things about fishing is not fishing. And this poem is called Not Fishing. I don't want to know the way snow dissolves, falling into salt water, the way solstice light begins to creep back into mornings on watch, the way hands cramp baiting hooks one after another, while stars shine like spilt salt on the black bread of night. I don't want to know the VHF sputtering sweet nothings on Valentine's Day, though I do know the small stones I carry in my heart. I don't want to know the weight of a winter king, his body thrashing on the side of the boat, streaming bloody water and wrath, his black mouth yawning with want, yellow eyes wide as a child's. I never want to leave home in winter to fish. I want to trade the ocean for a cup of tea, an arm around my waist, the small mercies of home. And I'll read one more really quick poem. It's brand new. I'm reading it out of my journal. And I wrote it after I took my son to visit my parents, and he took his first trip down to my dad's seiner, which is the boat that I crewed on for 8 summers. And so this is called, for now, Seasons, or Haiku for My Father, February 21st, 2022. Northeasterly, cold as the skipper's hair is white, grandson's hands on the wheel. Thank you guys. See you next year.
Awesome, Sierra. I must admit, I have the not fishing poem on my bathroom wall. And I know that top house. It's so fun to imagine the next generation in it. Thanks so much for being here. And we are closing out the first set here with Philip Randolph-Patton here. He has one long disastrous season chasing herring in Norton Sound under his belt, as well as a few seasons in a Seattle boatyard, a couple seining in Southeast, and a bit of seining in a desert, which I'm not totally clear on, but I look forward to hearing about one day. He lives in West Seattle, and he's busy working on some books on the amusingly convoluted history of theoretical aerodynamics. I don't think that's what we're going to be hearing about this evening.
No, you do not want it.
Excited to pass the mic to you, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Elma, and the organizers and the audience. And it is just an honor to be with so many great performers, great stories and poems. This is seining for carp in the desert. Seining for carp in a desert? Surely you're joking, Mr. Phillip. Probably the most preposterous assertion of a commercial fishing location imaginable, huh? Nah, dead serious. My first fishing job, real fish, carp with scales. Trust me, the reality isn't as fun as the title. Besides, it was an irrigated desert. Well, it was along about 1970. I was 21. I found that even Gentiles could work on an Israeli kibbutz, all romanticized by Jewish friends. A destination. I just wanted to go somewhere else. To get the hell out of, well, Seattle. 5 months hitching in Europe, 7 in captured Palestine. Little seine nets everywhere these days, like Putin's, pulling in more, well, land, plus the native species. God, I met a 14-year-old carp in East Jerusalem who invited me to his octagonal Moorish home for lunch. He had to explain to oblivious young idiot me, we don't like to be occupied. A Jewish kid and I wandered through the captured, evacuated Golan Heights town of Kytr, little orchards with plums, apples, pomegranates, grapes, in front and back of each tiny, emptied, concrete peasant house, each still holding a feeling. These people loved to live here. These people loved to live here. Oh yeah, fishing. 5 months on a kibbutz in northern Israel. They had 13 carp ponds, about the size of football fields. Each had 2 sizes of carp, because little and big occupied different ecological niches and got along okay, unlike the peoples of these lands. They wanted me to kill turtles, big things, that, like the Palestinians, were indigenous, because they ate the fish as food, the turtles, not the Palestinians. Hell, the kibbutzniks wouldn't even eat the carp, let alone their fish food. nasty bony things, the carp, not the kibbutzniks or the Palestinians. After I smashed one's shell with a rock, a turtle, not a Palestinian, and it crawled away, God, after that I'd just throw them in the drainage ditch. The turtles, not the Palestinians. Well, there was that time when the guys yelled at me to kill a Palestinian viper. That's a snake. It was big. I beat it with a 2-inch thick steel pole. They all laughed. Some harmless species. It was probably a reincarnated seiner catching little carp that did eat fish food. But the ponds and fishing. We'd drain them low, run a small seine around the lowest part, and scoop the carp into a bucket escalator up to a bubbleator truck. The bigger ones driven off to be turned into gefilte fish, a delicacy about as appealing as haggis. The little ones recycled into ponds with even littler ones to grow up to be caught and shipped. See, the actuality wasn't as improbable as the title, Seining for Carp in the Desert. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And 2 good ones. Good to learn that you can seine in a desert. Okay, everyone, we are at the end of our first set here on Saturday night. We will take a short intermission and be back right here at 8 o'clock with another set of amazing Fisher Poets until a little bit later this evening. If you missed last night's set or our celebration of our dear friend and Fisher poet, John Campbell, both of those are saved and will be, all of our live streams from the weekend will be available in the future via the YouTube channel. So thanks everyone for being here. Take a break, walk around the block, eat some food, and we'll be back. Be safe. Thank you.
And we're back.
Well, good evening. Welcome back. This is the 25th annual FisherPoets Gathering, coming to you from Astoria, Oregon, and the wider world. I'm Jay Speakman, your host for the last set. This will be the fourth set of the gathering. And I'm sure glad you're all here. I'm glad to be here. A few quick words of introduction. I would like to thank some people for making this possible. Some of our sponsors include the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicki Stringfellow, for their generous support, the Oregon Sea Grant, who is supporting Amanda, who's very much involved in the stage management, KMUN and the Tillicum Foundation, the Oregon Community Foundation's Patricia Freeland Fund, who have supported us for quite a number of years, the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through that, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund, Carol Brill and Douglas Booth. We also want to thank our stage crew, Jamie Doyle, Amanda Gladix, and others who are behind the scene. We have a pretty big lineup. We've got 18 people on our list tonight. And first up will be Alana Kansaku-Sarmiento from Portland, Oregon. What I know about Alana is she was raised in Hawaii, fished in Nushagak set netting, and sailed out of Kodiak, and came to the FisherPoets Gathering in 2016. I've been to all four of those places, so I guess that we have that in common. So, Alana, welcome. Thanks for joining us again.
It's so good to see your face and obviously everybody's faces. Thank you, Jay. And yeah, thank you everybody who helped make this possible. I miss you all, but I'm glad that we can be here as we are right now. The piece that I'm about to read, somebody yesterday, Annie, I believe, from Friday Harbor, had a piece with a similar topic. So I'm excited to hear what she thinks about it if she's listening now. This piece is called The Marbled Murrelet. We caught a bird in the net. It wasn't the first time. They're tiny little things out there on big water. I now believe it was a creature called the marbled murrelet. We had traveled to the southernmost district of Ugashik for our late season in Bristol Bay, and there we'd see dozens of murrelets a day, all seemingly too full to fly. They'd be grooving along on the sea around our boat, and we'd watch with a close eye as the current drifted them closer and closer to our net in the water, the cork lines bobbing in time with the birds. Our skipper spent a fair amount of time towing our nets away from these birds who seemed so intent on getting snagged. This went on for a few days. We had traded the incessant parade of ghost fish in Nushagak, their pale, putrid bodies bottlenecking upriver and racing through tide rips, for the would-be bycatch birdies of Ugashik. We caught our first bird in spite of all our best efforts and were able to free it by reaching over the stern without even bringing the net on board. We plopped him back in the water, downwind of our net, where he continued his cork imitation without a word of thanks. The weather was up when we caught our next murrelet. This one was spending most of its time underwater, but we couldn't bring it over the roller without hurting it, nor could we reach it by hand or hook over the stern. JP jumped over the stern and onto the swim step for better access. This was the second time he had to do this today, the first time having been to rescue the cork line, an apparent cousin of the murrelet, from our jet intake. At this point, he was running out of dry underwear and socks. JP grabbed the tangle of feathers and mesh while water slapped without apology up against the stern of the boat, which was now out of gear and equally at mercy to the tide and wind as these full-bellied birds. After his fourth or fifth wave to the face, the bird was still mostly underwater, so JP finally sliced a hole in the net in order to free it. I asked him to hand it to me, and I brought the stunned bird near the entrance of the cabin and set it on my hoodie. It tried to stand, but turned out it had no sea legs. I figured she should have a chance to rest, I said. She's just a little shocked, but she'll recover, said JP. We finished bringing the net on board. I went back to check on her. JP walked up behind me. Let's put her back in the water, he said. I picked her up, hesitatingly, and asked if he didn't think it was too soon. They're used to being in the water. That's why she looks so awkward on deck. She'll be fine. I looked from JP down to the little bird in my stiff orange gloves, and over to the green water streaming past our starboard as Eric throttled on to the next set. I looked back up to JP, and again back down to the bird. My face screwed up and began to feel unseasonably warm. But what if she won't be fine? I felt like a toddler, my tears sudden and hot as I tried to will them away. As a personal rule, I try to save all my crying for the head, not the deck. She'll be fine, he said. I leaned my hip against the rail and looked over one more time. With a quiet sob, I tossed the tiny body as gently as I could into what appeared to be a churning, frothing mass. For a second, it dunked beneath the surface and I lost sight of it. As we sped away, it popped back up like the cork it so resembles and shook its little brown wings out. JP was right, I thought. It looks much less awkward in the water than on deck. I felt a pat on the shoulder. JP walked away. After all the killing we do every season, the second nature motions of bleeding and tossing fish, the putting out of so many majestic lights, some might think it would be easier to grapple with the constant shadow of death. A shadow that seems to move just enough to stay out of full view every time you turn around. A shadow that moves with you. A shadow sometimes as tiny as that of a cork or of a murrelet, for that matter, on an overcast day. A shadow sometimes as large as one cast by a cliff in the sun. While pulling the net in on our next set, we found one last bird. He was dead. I wordlessly removed it from the net and threw it back in the water and wondered why I didn't cry. Thank you.
Thanks, Alana. I've had birds come aboard my boat when I was lobstering offshore, and I always had a place in my heart for them. It's a tough place out there for a bird that gets when things go wrong. Yeah, I like your chair. Mine doesn't move like that, but it has a great sort of feel to it. Anyway, Dan Kytr is up next. What can I say about Dan? Most of the hair on Dan's head is now on his chin. He's growing a mean beard. Welcome, Dan. I understand that you are from Chinook, Washington, just across the river. Love to have you back. Love to hear from you.
Well, thank you, thank you. Well, welcome aboard, all of my Fisher Poet friends. You have caught me standing right here on the back deck of life, looking back upon my commercial fishing career. I was born in Astoria, Oregon, born and raised, 60% Yugoslavian, 40% Tennessee hillbilly, and 100% Astoria fighting fisherman. I earned my very first commercial fishing dollar in the late 80s on the mighty Columbia with my uncle Jack Marinkovich aboard the Andy J. But I truly cut my teeth in this commercial fishing industry when I left for the Bering Sea on a little crab boat called the Maverick. Now, this was the early 90s. And I tell you, the opilio fishery of the early 90s was every bit the heyday of the king crab fishery in the late 70s in the Bering Sea. In 1991, the opilio quota was 300 million pounds. Young men such as myself were racing to Alaska with the dreams of getting rich. Yet, as one small catch, there's a good chance you may just die trying. Now, as a young man headed north to Alaska, I felt invincible at times. I felt stronger than anything I could imagine. And the pride and just the ambition that I found was something even overwhelming for myself. Now, as a young man stepping onto the deck of a Bering Sea crab boat, I found myself lost in the hard work that was laid before me. Now, many of the men that found their way to the Bering Sea found themselves unable to deal with the cold, soul-crushing exhaustion that was about to come upon their lives. If you can imagine a quota of 300 million pounds, you've got 250 boats vying for this quota. It would take us 5 full months to catch this crab, day after day, month after month, hauling gear in the freezing spray and the vicious storms. There was approximately 1,400 men that would make their way to Alaska into this fishery. And unfortunately, not all of us would make our way home. Now, the first piece, or the only piece I'm going to actually read, Bering Sea Strong, I initially wrote as sort of a symbolic piece to these men that have battled these conditions season after season, year after year. But I tell you, as life goes on, I have found that this strength is possessed by all of us. We all will find ourselves sailing into these unavoidable storms of life. We will find ourselves needing to find the inspiration within ourselves to fight, to stand once again and move forward. So this piece right here, which I really consider maybe not my best written, but it certainly is my signature piece, Bering Sea Strong. There is a beast that roams out west. He is tougher and stronger than all the rest. As the ice appears and the nights wear on, the winds they play a vicious song. It is so much more than just a physical test. It's a drive to live and be your best. Yet for all the men that ride these waves, there is one fact we all look at. Some of these men are not coming back. Every year we ring the bell. We close our eyes as they begin to swell. The children look and wonder why. Why, my father? Why, oh why? We never got to throw the ball, the hugs, the kisses. We'll miss them all. I have had my tears. I've known the pain of losing friends. I have had my tears freeze for them. But there is one thing that we must do. Haul that next pot and push on through. It's not always the sea that takes these men. Some are just lost deep within. They cannot find peace upon dry land, and the other fisheries do not test their hand. So for all those men, both here and gone, fair winds, smooth seas, forever on. We'll see everybody in Astoria next year. And always remember to never forget, we're all Bering Sea Strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Good to see you. Great story. And yeah, those were the Wild West days. I liked your background. There's quite a bit going on there. Lots of mementos. I recognize my poster and my wife's both there on the wall. Very honored to have that. Next we have Lara Messersmith-Glavin from Portland, Oregon. Lara grew up in salmon seining on Kodiak. And she says that she retired at 21, which is quite amazing in itself. And now writes and teaches and is a member of the Guttery Writers, which sounds pretty intriguing. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Ooh, that's an old bio. I'm not in that group any longer, but it's really great to be here. Thanks, Jay. So nice to see and hear everyone. Dana, you're a tough act to follow. I've got a book coming out this spring. It's called Spirit Things. And I'm going to read a short excerpt from the chapter about shells. When the land and the ocean meet, they speak with many voices and arrive in many moods. Standing on the shore, I imagine the babble and pigeons of crossroads, water travelers coming to trade with the people of stone and the couriers of wind. No two beaches sound exactly the same. Some waves gnaw at the sand, crunching it ever finer, swallowing it back with the tide. Others hurl their shoulders against the pits and crags of rocks, gathering and exploding in rhythmic smash. Some creep up the stony edge with myriad wet fingers, then hiss and retreat, tumbling small stones as they slide. Underfoot, some beaches tick and chime as their stones roll and strike. Others clatter like handfuls of coins. Still others whisper as their sand is tossed in the wind, or squelch as they cave and flood with every footstep. Walking on beaches is never about a destination. I'm rarely trying to get from one specific point to another or with any great speed. It's about being there on the edge of the infinite, staring out into the closest thing to a straight line that nature has to offer, the water horizon. And it's about seeing what is there beneath my feet. Beachcombing is like finding magic eye patterns. From the noise of complex visual static, a new image emerges suddenly, visible and plain where nothing was moments before. My eyes travel across the surface of the beach underfoot, gliding past millions upon millions of tiny stones, crystals, grains of sand, shells, bits of seaweed, and crabs with every step. How does the eye find what it's looking for? Is it novelty that draws attention to itself, an unusual color or shape? Or maybe it is that some shells are simply more perfect than others, their very shellness describing an ideal form. And so it is in their similarity to all other shells, to the idea of a shell or a stone or a feather, whatever type of prize it is I have found, that it becomes special, a thing to be treasured. The act of beachcombing requires patience and a slow pace, a submission to the powers of serendipity and attention. I let my eyes relax and find things through intuition and some other less accessible process of beholding. Like water divining, I follow the ground and trust the idea that there are shapes and colors that simply want to be found. I wait to hear the shell's voice or the pebbles. Some seem to want to stay right where they are. Others long to travel, to be flung back into the water or to be pocketed for some adventure. Sometimes I pick one up only to find that it wants to be set back down before I leave the beach, as if it only wanted to keep me company for a while, or it needed a lift a few hundred yards down. Either way, knowing what feels right to take and to leave involves a great deal of listening. One of the reasons beachcombing feels so reflective is because it involves moving with intention through a liminal zone. The beach is not a hard boundary. The ocean is not a wall. The intertidal line between shore and sea shifts constantly and sometimes violently. What was once underwater can later be many yards away from the edge of the waves, and what was shore, dry land, can quickly be submerged, rendered deadly or unreachable. The shifting of zones makes it wild and, if not exactly unpredictable, then unknowable in the way of a person whose moods swing with precipitous angles. Is this place for me or not for me? What manner of place is it, after all? In this liminal zone, creatures and objects from one world can be stranded in the other. Trash from the dry world gets tossed into the ocean and then spit back out onto the beaches. Land things spend time at sea and are returned, rendered strange and round and new. Driftwood bleaches pale and grows soft on the edges. Bottles shatter and tumble and are returned as curved jewels that only shine when wet. Bones crack and grow wood-like. Feathers become stiff and flightless, sticky, sharp arrows, and tiny sandcastle flags. Water things get left behind when the tide recedes, crab carapaces like brittle pink stones, kelp forming long, rubbery snakes in the sand, jellyfish hardened to blobs of jam, bubbles and foam, the sea aggravated to froth on the beach. It is these marooned objects that we gather and assemble into collections and mobiles, that we dangle from strings or fill our pockets, attempting to carry some of the feeling of the liminal zone, the unknowability, back home with us. Thank you so much. I hope to see you next year.
Thanks so much, Lara. That was very nice. Really appreciated that. Next up, we've got a couple of guys that call themselves Shanghaied on the Willamette.
Arr, yeah.
Arr. And, well, Jonathan Lay and Gordy Euler have been coming to the Fisher Poets Gathering for many years. Gordy plays a range of instruments, including a mandola.
Mandola.
He's got in his hands. John plays guitar and they both sing. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here for Fisher Poets Gathering. We're going to do you a song about a couple of oystermen out of New York, Brooklyn, New York. And this was back in the turn of the century, 1896 or so. They're working hard, dredging oysters, and they found a way to make money a little quicker.
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2.
Century lived two young Norwegians, so brave and so bold. Frank Samuelson, only halfway through his 20s. George Harbo had just become 30 years old. Now Harbo had spent all his life on the water. He'd shipped in square riggers when only a lad. His partner likewise was no stranger to working. No matter the task, he gave all that he had. Here a rich publisher offered a challenge that men in a vessel, no matter the size, couldn't cross the Atlantic without steam or canvas, and $10,000 he named as a prize. Now dredging up oysters by hand is no picnic, and these two Norwegians were tough as a whip. With Frank and me rowed only 4 miles an hour. In 54 days we can finish the trip. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven. Right, Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row all the way. Obtaining a sponsor, they started their training. They ordered a dory of cedar and oak, just 18 feet long with a draft of 8 inches, and Fox was the name of their cockle-shell boat. On the 6th day of June 1890, and 6 Messers, Harbo and Samuelson, started to row. They took food and water till last them till August, and the newspaper said they were foolish to go. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row all the way. Manhattan they rode through the Narrows, then onto the Gulf Stream and over the Dee. Each day they would row 18 hours together. At night they took turns getting 3 hours sleep. Their stove wouldn't light So they ate cold provisions, their arms and their hands became swollen and cramped. The odd passing vessel that took them on board was their only relief from the toil and the damp. Then out on the Grand Banks, the weather attacked them. The wind dumped the water into mountainous waves. They lashed down their oars and they tied on their lifelines and prayed they were not going straight to their graves. We'll see you in France and we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. Then out of the dark came a monstrous wave, capsizing the fox and her terrified crew. Their lifelines held fast, but they lost half their water, and most of their food it was swept away too. They carefully rationed the little remaining, praying for help as they rode on the brine. Then out in the distance they spied a tall ship with the colors of Norway afloating behind. Now the captain could not be convinced they were crazy, but he gave them supplies and they went on their way. By the lines on the charts they were halfway to Europe, but now they must row 60 miles every day. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. The weather held fair and the two men kept pulling up through each long day and far into each night. Then early one morning before the sun rose, far out on the horizon they spotted a light. On August the 1st they made land off St. Mary's off the south coast of England, close by Bishop's Rock. In amazement the townsfolk gathered down by the water, for Harbo and Samuelson barely could walk. Most men would have stopped then to bask in their glory, after having been sunbeaten, capsized and starved. But they were both back in their boat the next morning, and in less than a week they arrived at Lahaina. We'll see you in France, and we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. So those of you listening who yearn for adventure, like Harbo and Samuelson so long ago, like them be prepared for the task you are facing. They were not only brave, but by God they could row. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. Hey, made it! They made it once again.
And you guys made it. Good work.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
I'm glad you guys did that. We made special arrangements that they could go a little bit over time, and because they wanted to do that song. That was a John Campbell song, and if some of you missed it, it was a great set that we had for John Campbell's final. We call it John Campbell's last set this afternoon. Was quite moving. All right, well, moving along. Actually, before we go to Robert Ray, who's up next, I would like to correct the credit that I gave earlier is for Tom and Vicky Stringfield. I said the name Stringfellow, and it's actually Stringfield, so my apologies for that. Next up is Robert Ray. Robert survived the sinking of the tug Eagle in a massive storm in the Gulf of Alaska in, I believe it was 1983. I was also in that storm myself.
It's quite a well-known event. Other people perished in that storm. So he'll tell you about it, I'm sure. He's got a new book. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, by the way. This is, I don't know, you can't probably see it. My new book is called Darkness in the Light of Day. I was chief engineer on the Tug Eagle back in 1983. And our normal run was from Seattle to Anchorage, Alaska. And we would haul 2 barges, each with about 7,000 tons of cargo. And we'd get to Anchorage, and then we would unload. And then after we unloaded, then we would reload the barges with retrograde and machinery and containers coming back to Seattle. In October of 1983, we were returning to Seattle southbound. We got to the mouth of the Cook Inlet, and they had reported storm warnings. So the captain diverted the tug and the 2 barges, and we went into Prince William Sound. We started just doing circles like we normally would and try to wait out the storm. About a half a day later, we got a clearance to go, and they said we would be having another storm coming upon us, but it shouldn't be there for another couple of days, and it would give us enough time to be able to get inside. So we whipped the horses, went outside, but we could only do a couple of knots just because the weather was still kind of lying down. Made the corner, started heading southbound, and as it calmed down, we increased the speed, and we're actually doing pretty good. And then on the morning of the 27th of October, my regular watch was 6 in the morning until noon, and then noon until midnight. So on the 27th, I worked that day, but it was so rough and getting rougher that the cook wasn't making anything for any of us to eat. The crew was pretty quiet. About all I could do was check the engines for fuel, transfer fuel, oil, those kinds of things. I got off watch at noon, went up to my stateroom, looked out my porthole there, and it was dark. I couldn't believe how dark it was. It seemed like it was almost evening time, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It continued to get rougher. I laid down to take a nap and kind of wedged myself in my bunk. And I woke up at about 2 o'clock to my cabinets flying open, everything in my cabinets going up against my door. I leaped out of bed, went to the door to open it, and I couldn't because everything was piled up. I threw everything out of the way, grabbed my survival suit, which was right above my bunk, opened the door, fell on the captain's door. The captain and any of us normally have our doors open when we're on watch, but for whatever reason, his door was closed. Otherwise, I would have fell all the way through. I walked in the bulkhead. We're at about a 40-degree list. Then I walked up the stairs, or kind of on the stairs and part of the bulkhead, on my hands and knees across the pilot house, put my survival suit on, and I hollered at the captain, "What the hell's going on?" He said, "We're going down." And just by hearing that, I was in shock, like, what the hell is going on here? Where is everybody? The captain was outside the port side door, along with the second mate and one AB. When I got outside the door, I asked the AB if I had my suit all the way zipped up, and his face was white as a ghost. All of them knew you can't jump in this water in 50-foot seas, 70-mile-an-hour winds, 65 miles offshore, and survive without a suit on. When just before she started to sink, I looked out, and the only thing I could see was the starboard side, the port side stack. Everything else was underwater. You couldn't see any of the back deck. They jumped off the bow in the water. I jumped to the raft. I had a hold of the raft. If they would have followed me, they could have got in the raft, but they didn't. The raft was still attached to the vessel. The tether was still attached to the vessel. And I started freaking out a little bit, thinking that if the boat sinks, that vortex is going to pull me down along with it. So I let go of the tether. And then found a piece of 1-inch poly, and I put it around my neck, and it dragged behind me. So I heard the captain give a mayday, but I didn't hear anyone actually returning the call. So I didn't know how long I was going to have to last in the water. And then, of course, my family, I was married. I also had 2 kids. They were 3 and 4. And I started praying, help me, Lord, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And I started going up the mountains of water. I'd get to the top, it would bust over me. I'd go down the other side, pop back up again. And when I got underwater, I had a beard at the time, the water would go inside my suit. And I did that for about 4 hours until the U.S. Coast Guard finally showed up. I'm out of time, but I would like you all to get my book. It's called Darkness in the Light of Day. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a true story, and I wrote it, and it was published in April of 2021. And I thank you again, Jay, for having me on.
Thanks, Robert. I didn't mention that Robert is coming to us from Hawaii. His background, of course, looks like he's on the space shuttle, but he's living in Wailuku on Maui, so we've got people coming to us from all over. But that's quite a harrowing story. So next up, we have Naphtali Forbes Fields from Kodiak, Alaska. I don't see her up on the screen, and so
Actually, I think we have Alec McMurrin.
Yeah, we're going to Alec.
Sorry. Missed Alec. There you go, Alec. Don't feel bad. Here you go. Thanks for joining us from the Red Room.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Robert. I'm Alec McMurrin, and we're here at Petersburg, Alaska. And we're going to change course a little bit, and I'm going to head into a storm of fish here. Nicole, my wife, and I have put kind of a West Coast spin on an old Pete Seeger song. Let's sing it. Called Bold Fisherman. Come all ye bold fishermen,
listen to me. We'll tell you a tale of the fish of the sea. Blow ye wind westerly, westerly blow. Bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes.
Up jump the herring, they're flipping about.
Come try to catch us.
They sing and they shout. Dive in a ball and are gone with the tide.
They said we'd be back,
but I think that they lied. Then come the salmon, he struts up on deck. He says,
you can't go fishing, you got holes in your net. Get them so look or you'll never catch me.
He's gone with a twist and he's back in the sea.
Blow you in westerly, westerly blow. Bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes.
Then come the halibut, flop on the hatch. He uses his muscles, dangerous catch. He says,
I'm a monster as big as a whale.
He's gone overboard with a thrash of his tail. Deep down the codfish,
they're black and they're gray.
Deep down the codfish, the black and the gray. He shakes off the line and goes swimming away. Turns with a grin as he spits out the hook.
I think that the fisherman might be good to cook.
Blow you in westerly, westerly blow.
bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes. Down on the bottom, the crowd marching them up. They call in the pots and they eat the bait up. They say,
we're still hungry, what shall we do? Hey, won't you fall in and we'll eat you up too?
Then come the fisherman all stalwart and grim, and with his big net he scoops all the fish in.
Blow you in westerly, westerly blow, bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes.
Blow you in westerly, westerly blow.
Well, thank you. That's great. Hey, so are we all done there? Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much. A little bit of theatrical entertainment there. So now we do have Naphtali showing up for us. Hi, Naphtali. I've yet to meet you myself. Welcome. I'm glad you've decided to join us tonight. The little I know about you, I think you're from Kodiak and grew up fishing. So that's about all I have to say. You can introduce yourself, if you will. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. My name is Naphtali Fields Forbes, and this is my first Fisher Poets gathering. Jay's right. I'm from Kodiak. I'm a third-generation setnetter, and this is an excerpt from a play that I wrote. I'm a director and a playwright called Setnet, an Alaskan Fishing Story. And I was loving the performance that just came on. Thanks, Alex and Nicole. That was awesome. Here's a little bit of an introduction to this island that 8 crew are trapped on for the duration of a salmon season, and they experience some of the joys and a lot of the trials of setnet season throughout the long Kodiak summer. This is the origin story of the island. Once there was a giant, a huge stumbling giant, riding green mountains up the Pacific headed for the Arctic. Had to get there before the ice came, join with his kin in the north, everything pushing against his journey. Snow whirling, wind whipping, waves pulling at his feet and his mountain horses. In anger, he pulls off his boot and throws it against the storm, leaving the boot behind. And it becomes an island, no more than a mile around. Beautiful. But when you throw a stone at the sky in anger, the sky remembers. And every family that's ever lived on the island has known troubles. Last summer, a fire, a mother gone and Render standing in the ashes, Talia wearing her mother's dress, trying to call Sarah home. But Render, you just watch. He's like that first giant. He'll keep on pushing, keep on fishing, won't even glance at the ashes on his own boots. There's more to the story. When the giant threw the boot, he hit Tiame, the woman in the wind. She fell from the sky, found the boot island, wove it out of the water with kelp hair and driftwood with songs, made a story, waiting for the winds to come and pull her back, but no one came. She wove a boat. It broke in the water. And salmon, a school of thousands of salmon, swam under her drowning body and lifted her, carried her north. The island was left behind, full of his anger, full of her tears. It wanted to follow, but was stuck fast in the ocean's mud. A lonely island never left the place it was forgotten. This is a song that the young female protagonist sings about her relationship to that island. I was born here on the island in the midst of a salmon run. My first breath was of seaweed, spruce trees, and the setting sun. My mother said the island would always treat me as her own. But my island didn't protect me from her leaving me alone. I've seen earthquakes and tsunamis here alone all through the year. I fish salmon with my father since I first could wear the gear. They always told me the island has a grip like the winter's wind. They told me no one could escape here, but last summer my mother did. Thank you. If you want to see more songs or excerpts from the play, go to the videos and extras page. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to see you. Thanks for coming and giving us that story and such a nice song. It's very refreshing to hear somebody singing a cappella style without any accompaniment. I know that takes a little bit of courage, and it's great to see you here. First timer, Naphtali Forbes Fields from Kodiak, Alaska. Next up, we have Melanie Brown. I'm glad you made it, Melanie. Good to see you. Melanie has grown up also fishing with her parents and putting up fish and preparing fish for the winter, and has great stories about all of that. And welcome to the Fisher Poets Gathering.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm going to share a song today. It's called Even When You're Far Away, and it was inspired by my great-grandparents. They've been gone for a really long time, but I feel like I'm still learning from them. And yeah, I learned to fish next to my great-grandpa, Paul Chacon, and then whenever we'd come back from the beach, my great-grandma, Anna Chacon, she'd always have really good food waiting for us. And then this song also speaks to when we have to leave the ones that we love to go fishing. And yeah, I feel like my great-grandparents, they taught me a lot about love, and I'm just still coming into the consciousness of that. But thank you for listening. I learned to handle salmon by your side. You saw me and I could feel your pride. So long ago you're being left this world, but your fire lives on in those you touched with your good. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Your hands cared for us with the food you made. I can still smell and taste your smoked fish in my mind. Your kindness continues when I create and share. Sometimes it feels as if you are still here. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Time and death did not take you away, because you came into our hearts to stay. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. I tried many times to be close to another heart. Then you came into my life and something felt altered. When I'm in nature, I see you in everything. Don't you know that you make my heart sing? Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Time and distance cannot take you away, because you came into my heart to stay. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I just wanted to say that normally I would be playing that with my music partner, who plays a really nice fat acoustic bass guitar. And yeah, it would have been nice to have his bass in there too. We call ourselves Sunny Porch, if you ever want to check our music out. But thanks for listening. It's so nice to be here.
Well, Melanie, it's nice to have you. We sure appreciate your music. It's great to hear your storytelling through your words and your music. So next up, we have a fellow named Rich Bard who used to fish, but now he's got his 4th book just coming out, which he'll probably try to tell you about if his poem doesn't take too much time. Welcome, Rich. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Jay. This poem's so new, it doesn't have a title. It was the 30th of June, was the day before the season opened. Crabs were scuffling in my head. It was a time of hope and fear. Pressure was on big time to put myself on the hot spot. If I started out on the fish, I'd have the biggest day of the year. I set a course for the fair weather grounds where I always had good luck. Ran through the night and drifted, got the gear in at first light. I made a few tacks and a whole lot more. I searched all over the bank. 8 hours later, going on noon, I hadn't had a single bite. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was an insurance salesman. Good steady pay with benefits. Go home when it's 5 o'clock. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I didn't have to fish. 'Cause when you got the skunk on board, it's like pounding your head on a rock. I left the West Bank, ran across to the east, put the gear in and started over. Caught a lot of nothing. Then at Fleet Corner was some boats going up and down. I tacked back and forth and all around, but never even got a wiggle. There were other boats here. Well, that was true, but there weren't any salmon around. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was a social studies teacher. Sunny classroom, respectful kids, all of them eager to learn. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I didn't have to troll. 'Cause when you can't find the fish, it's a slow burn. I trolled on down to the bank's lower end. I searched all over the place. Went across all the likely spots. I still had nothing to show. After a while, it began to get dark. Time to make a decision. I had to leave this desert, but where was I supposed to go? I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was a software engineer. Work in a place that had its own gym, get my muscles toned. If I was an actuary, wouldn't have to care about no salmon. I'd just put in my 10-hour day, then go to the club and get stoned. I ran through the night to the inner bank. I drifted till the daylight came. Started again on the ideal spot on the finger's eastern end. I trolled right up the middle, where I'd always found kings before. 4 hours brought not one stupid fish. I was going around the bend. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was an influencer on Twitter. Hot pop singers and soccer players would beg to be on my blog. Wish I was an actuary. Wish I could just get a life. Not be blundering around like some old homeless dog. I kept on trolling out to the west. I got to the triple 40s, where a fish climbed on, then a whole lot more. It became a giant haul. A day and a half and we filled the boat. Had to go in to sell. I began to think that trolling maybe wasn't so bad after all. I'm glad I'm not an actuary. Glad I'm not imprisoned in some cubicle. Even if the chance is next to zero that I'd ever drown. Glad I'm not an actuary. Glad I'm out here on the ocean. It might be chill, but there ain't much thrill in working on solid ground. So that's the poem with no name. And there's a book that does have a name, Tsioux Blue, spelled T-S-I-U like the river. You could probably search for it if you wanted. But one more thing. It's still February. It's still dark and cold and wet. But if you squint at the horizon, you can almost see the next season coming along here. And when it does, and when it's opening day, I hope you put yourself on a huge pile of fish. And you can take that metaphorically if you want. Good luck. Bye.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate a little harmonica and fast rap from fellow fishermen. That's great. I haven't heard you do that before. So yeah, something new. And I guess your book is out there. I'm sure that you it's easy enough to find. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon. Next up is John Palms. John comes from Juneau. He lives on his boat in the boat harbor there. He's been at many a gathering in the past. Love to see him back. He's written a lot of memorable songs, including one of my favorites, Addicted to Pink. So welcome, John Palms. John, I guess he showed up in the ante room here, and I'm hoping that he can join us. While we're here, before John comes on, why don't I give you a little roundup? We're about halfway through the set here, so I would like to say a few things. We've been moving along pretty quickly here. As mentioned before, we did lose our beloved sound man Mick Hassan last summer, and then more recently we just lost one of our favorite performers, John Campbell from Rhode Island. I'd like to remember both of them fondly. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicky Stringfield, as I said, for their long-term generous support, the Oregon Sea Grant, KMUN, Tillicum Foundation, the Oregon Community Foundations, Patricia Freeland Fund, who have also been a longtime supporter of the gathering, the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through it, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund, Carol Brill and Douglas Booth. Thank you, all of you, for your generosity and continued support. So next up, we have John Palms coming to us. I'm glad you were able to join us, John.
Thank you.
It's yours.
You got me. Okay, good. So I think, first of all, I have to say thanks, everybody. This is just, how could I find an audience or a place to do this? And it's so amazing being part of the whole thing. And I just wish that I had spent more time with John Campbell. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of love songs, and this one I used to hand troll around Elfin Cove, and there's a place called the Laundry, and it was mentioned in readings last night, which was also really cool. I mean, people know about these little places that I've been fishing. Okay, so the Laundry is a place where we used to catch cohos, and a long time ago, the seiners used to even seine in there. It's really narrow, and there's rocks in there. Anyway, so this is called Retro Love. During the course of the season, the price changes, and you might get a cost adjustment. You might get it during the season. You might get it the following year. Our season of romance is all over now. There's a closure at Love's buying scow. The thrill has gone upstream. Push has come to shove. Now what I need is some of your retro love, your retro love. I fish Love's Laundry, hand crank 20 spreads, dawn until dusk with 30-pound leads. I brought you everything, cleaned in a tub, and now what I need is some of that retro love, retro love. Well, retro love is in the Bible, and it's a true fact that if you fish for the Lord, well, the Lord pays you back. When God gave Noah the rainbow sign and sent down his dove, it was an outward manifestation of his retro love. Now when retro is coming, you just have to guess. And how much do I report to Love's IRS? In with the ebb, out with the flood, the circadian rhythm of retro love. Now, no matter how clever or handsome you are, if you fish around Gaff Rock, you will find that 4. Tie up another 20 spreads, give the wheel of fate a shove, put down your hoochies for retro love. Okay, well, it's different doing this when you don't have an audience, because I would be getting audience reaction. You would be laughing. You would be clapping. Okay, well, anyway, here's another one. Not too loose, not too tight. My vinyl of mediums fit just right. Take the cuts and the nicks from my fish cleaning knife. My bright orange vinyl of gloves. Made in Malaysia, where the vinyl grows tall, orange and blue. Molded over a soft cotton core to the shape of a relaxed hand. Orange or blue, which one for you? Before you go out on deck, before you pull the gear, before you touch a fish, before anything gets tough, put on your vinyl love gloves, your bright orange vinyl love gloves. Now, when I die and they lay me to rest, there in my coffin, in my suit and my vest, I might go to heaven, but not right away. Probably in purgatory, at least a few days. Who knows what might come up? Please slip on a pair of gloves, bright orange vinyl love gloves. Now, my rain gear, PVC over nylon, no matter what kind, no matter what brand. Helly Hansen, Uniroyals, Korea, Japan. But look what they've done to our extra toughs. Now don't you mess with my vinyl loves. My bright orange, molded to the shape of a relaxed hand. Vinyl love gloves. Thank you, everybody, very much. And call that number on your screen and make sure you're getting all the benefits you deserve.
All right, you did it. Thank you, John. Come all the way from Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah, we're on a boat about 150 yards off the coast of North America right now.
All right. Well, I hope you have a good bilge pump.
I don't need one. It doesn't leak.
Mm-hmm. All right. Good man. Good man. Well, good to see you again. So thank you for that. Well, next up we have Tella Adson from Bow, Washington. Tella is a self-described tree-hugging, tofu-eating, yoga-posing commercial fisherman writer. I took that right off the website. Welcome, Tella.
Thanks, Jay, and Amanda, and Jamie. Hey, friends. I'm going to keep this intro short. I've been salmon trolling out of Sitka since 1984 as a boat kid, and this piece is from last August. It's called Sam Boats. On the Nurka, Joel and I troll for kings off Baranoff. On the Charity, Martin's had 1 foot out the fishery since we were kids. The Charity was meant to be his dad's retirement trawler. Lloyd had a stroke. The boat fell into Martin's hands. 23 years later, with a partner and a child on land, he thinks about the time he has left with them, the time he doesn't have. He says this August afternoon is his last. 10 miles east, on the Pacific Ranger, Jeff and son John fish dogs in West Crawfish. They see the Lady Cypress enter the inlet as if to join the fleet, then drift oddly sideways instead. On the Lady Cypress, the captain is having a stroke. The deckhand calls the Coast Guard. There's no reply. On the Pacific Ranger, Jeff glances at the cliffs framing the fjord, sea level straight to 4,000 feet. Crawfish is an isolation tank. Nothing in, nothing out. Jeff responds to the call. On the Sunset, Zane is a trained nurse. The inlet is as deep as the cliffs are tall. Drag 50 fathoms, your poles scrape the trees. Nowhere to drop anchor. Zane stacks his gear, puts his boat in neutral to drift. On the Beaufort Sea, the crew launches a Zodiac. They zip over to the Sunset and rush Zane to the Lady Cypress. 4 miles west, on the Minkie, Bert is able to hear the Lady Cypress. He relays to the Coast Guard. On the Jubilee, Zane's friend gets a line on the Sunset to keep the nurse's boat off the rocks. On the Lady Cypress, Zane reports to Bert that the patient is a 70-year-old male, right side deficit. He cannot talk. It's now been an hour since the deckhand called for help. On the Minkie, Bert knows Crawfish is a 5-minute flight from Sitka. He snaps into the mic. We got an ETA on that chopper yet? The Beaufort Sea rafts to the Lady Cypress, anticipating the tender's open deck will be easier to pick from. They don't anticipate the force of rotor wash as the Jayhawk hovers above. The crew scrambles to strap down tote lids, readies for a second try. On the Beaufort Sea, the rescue swimmer secures the captain in the basket, sends him up. On the Lady Cypress, the deckhand starts the 3-hour run to Sitka. On the Sunset, Zane puts his boat in gear. On the Pacific Ranger, John and Jeff run their lines. On the Minkie, Bert hangs up the radio. On the Charity, Martin stacks his gear for the last time. He calls to share the moment without really having words to do so. Looking back, he recalls, wasn't that long ago we pushed ourselves so hard just to prove we could, to survive, to stay afloat. On the Nurka, I think about what it takes to survive. An early pandemic rallying cry chirped, we're all in the same boat. Anyone with actual sea time heard that phrase as the lie it was. Naive, dangerous, empathy and aid contingent on our perceived sameness. From these vessels crowded with our dreads and our dreams, we are keenly aware of what it took to get through this day. what it takes to get through all these days. So many people on so many different boats. I want to thank my fleet mates John and Jeff and Bert and Martin for talking to me about this piece, and I want to thank you all for being here wherever you are, on whatever different boats. We love you. We'll see you next year.
Thanks, Tella. And that was a well-written piece, well read. Surely appreciate having you. And I'm not going to take a lot of time to introduce Joel, who is coming to you from the same location. Yeah, we've seen Joel here for quite a few years now, and it's great to see you maturing into a musician and writer and performer that you are. Take it away, man.
Thanks, Jay. I'm going to sing a song for you guys today, and this is a love song inspired by the two most powerful women in my life, my wife Tella and the ocean. It's called You Are Home. Waves roll out as far as I can see, across an ocean, the iris of your eye, and your current carries me home. I take refuge in the beat of your heart, and the world can wait. They won't find us here, 'cause we have found love in the calm between the storms that rage inside of us, in the shelter of your arms. I am secure, and this will always be.
arms that range inside of us in the shelter of your arms. I am secure, and this will always be
Thanks for everybody putting this on, and hope to see you all in Astoria next year.
Thank you, Joel. That was great. Great to see you back. Loved your music. And look forward to having you in person next year. We're all hoping that we can get it back together and walk into any of a number of favorite venues face to face. So let's hold that good thought. Now the next guy on the list happens to be myself. And I wrote something just for this occasion, and so I'm going to give it a try. It's called Red Sky Morning. And a little background on this piece. When I was in my early 20s, I dropped out of college, went back to Maine, lived on a little island with about 100 people. Lived on venison and sea ducks during the fall and winter, and got a job as deckhand. I worked on a number of boats off that island. There were about 70 or 80 people living on the island. It's about 700 acres, about 3 or 4 miles off the close to Maine, and 14 lobster boats in the harbor, every one of them supporting a family. Very traditional, all wooden boats, wooden gear. And when the winter winds came howling, everybody came ashore. It was a day fishery, and the boats were 35, 36 feet, maybe 100, 150 horsepower. Not really kind of boats you'd want to be offshore 10 miles off in the winter when it's below freezing, maybe 8, 10 below zero at times. So this is called Red Sky Morning, and it's about a little story about how it was. In fact, some of the guys on that island were old enough, I was young enough, that one of my cohorts, Charlie Gray, we called him Zane Gray, was had fished on the Grand Banks out of a dory. So those times are gone, but this is how it was. When that old north wind comes howling, ice along the shore, boats are riding their moorings, poverty at my door. Red sky in the morning, white caps on the bay. Not a soul is going fishing, I won't see $1 today. And that wind just keeps on blowing, hoping for a better day. As if I can't go out fishing, man, how am I ever gonna make it pay? Well, I think I'll go down to the lobster dock see what's going on. Ain't felt cold like this since I left Saskatchewan. Pull on my red ball sea boots, throw another log in the stove. I grab my heavy pea coat, down the road I go, and that wind just keeps on blowing, hoping for a better day. If I can't go out fishing, man, how am I ever gonna make it pay? In an office down by the bait shed, all the boys are there, clouds of cigarette smoke, just a hanging in the air. Old men telling stories, some of them telling lies. Heard 'em all before, guess I'll hear them one more time. Red sky in the morning, white caps on the bay, not a soul's going fishing. How the hell is a young man ever in this world gonna make it pay? There you have it. Red sky in the morning. Thank you so much. And so next, we have Jeff Stonehill from Seattle, Washington. Well, actually, Jeff is from Cordova, I understand, and fished many, many years. Fished the Copper River, Prince William Sound, gill netted on the Columbia and the Grays River, and ran fish buyers. And so thanks for coming, Jeff. Take it off.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I gill netted and salmon up in Copper River, ran tenders up there for about 20 years. And there were some good years. Bought a new pickup truck, wintered in Hawaii, and some bad years. Well, this one's about the bad years. Bad year on the Copper. When the Copper is a flopper. And the Sound forecast is down. Seems as sorry gill netters gonna have to poke around for some sort of side gig. Something to do this fall. Pound some nails. Work at Walmart. Anything at all to wiggle through the winter. Try to make ends meet. Pay for that new gill net. And the kids have got to eat. This summer was a bummer. Fish and Feathers shut her down. Few times that we got to fish, there wasn't much around. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish seemed to be the theme. And when I checked that checkbook, it looked like a bad dream. Paid the fuel dock, dodged the boat loan, rode a tender home. No winter in Hawaii this year. Can't afford to roam. All October, I stayed sober, barely bought a beer. In November, I got lucky, filled the freezer with a deer, but by Christmas dinner, we'll be thinner. Unless I catch on with a crabber, some sketchy ride on a rust bucket boat, but you better know I'd grab her. No way to land a longline job without some quota share. My deckhand days didn't qualify. Damn deal don't seem fair. Those rainy walks pounding the docks were just a waste of time, and I'm not the kind of fella to take up a life of crime. So I guess the deal is a day job, some slavery on the beach. And CEO of a high-tech startup is probably out of reach. had my fill of the plywood mill when I was just a kid, and there's no more work out in the woods the way my granddad did. There's a skinny payday at the Safeway, stocking cases of pop. Clean up on aisle 3 if you're handy with a mop. There's a lesson here if you'll bend an ear to what I'm trying to say. When the fish are running, don't be funning. Fish hard every day. Keep slapping it out. No quitting early is what I'm trying to preach. Because a bad year grinding on the grounds beats a day job on the beach. So that's a little advice to you young whippersnappers out there. Keep it wet. Special thanks to everybody, especially John and Jay and Amanda and the crew for making this virtual round haul happen. See you all next year in Astoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That's great. Sure appreciate seeing you. Fred Bailey's up next. Lives aboard his sailboat. As far as I know, he's worked as a tractor salesman. Now that's an obscure profession. I've done a lot of things, but I've never sold tractors. Fred's from British Columbia, Ladysmith, BC, out on the island, or off of the Vancouver Island. So thanks for coming, Fred. It's all yours.
Hey, Jay, want to buy a tractor?
Sure.
Okay, fine. Well, hopefully, first of all, I should say a huge thank you to all you wonderful people that have put this electric light show together. Thank you so much. It sure helps on this dark and rainy night. Hopefully next year we're all back in the groove, alive and in color in Astoria, and maybe we'll even still be able to recognize each other. I guess it's just tick-tock. We're working on a tiny clock here, and we'll get at her. I once worked as an engineer on fish packers that live hauled farm salmon out of the infamous Broughton Archipelago. Fish Ubering is not a piece of my life that I'm especially proud of, but it fed the wolf, and I learned a lot during my time around Fish Auschwitz. Now, I regard farm fish as domestic creatures. Comparing them to wild salmon is like putting a milk cow up against a white-tailed buck. Just can't be done. Those fish are sure as hell not wild nor native, and it's not unreasonable to see them as simple dumbass cattle. They had only known life in hatcheries and then as fattening protein cakes swimming round and round with thousands of others inside a farm pen. What could they know of the complex nature of inlets and passages and rivers and streams, islands and tides that are our coast for hundreds of miles? Isn't one molecule of seawater the same as the next? Well, apparently not. The entire point of this little story is what I tell you now. Just stupid farm fish, right? We'd have up to 80,000 pounds of live fish swimming in the belly of the packer as we headed for the fish plant. It'd take a while to get the boat away from the farm site out through one or another tortuous routes into Johnson Strait. Then running with the flood tide, we might have a bottom speed of over 10 knots. The strait is over a mile wide, and we'd run the side with the fastest current at the moment. But when we passed a stream mouth, even a small one on the far side, the fish would become frantic, and we'd have to adjust the oxygen for the change in their absorption rate. I still wonder about this all these years later. How could those pellet-eating morons know? Clearly, despite their state of utter confusion, they sensed something special which stirred primal instincts. Was it smell or taste, something magnetic, or perhaps electrical? It was occurring inside their tiny fish brains within a very noisy boat, hurtling through waters completely unknown to these creatures. How? How could they know? Jellyfish, which have no brains that we can find, manage to migrate and spawn in specific places at certain times. But then even humans have clearly proven you don't need much intellect to spawn. I can't offer rational explanations. I only manage to dredge up another question once in a while. But then maybe being occasionally awed by a fact of life is an achievement for us modern folk. Well, I dug out a little quick one out of the archives, and for some reason I like it. And on a dark, rainy night like tonight, when you're trying to remind yourself that spring's just around the corner, this is a little piece called Painting the Dory. There is promise in the gleam of wet paint on the inverted, curving hull of a small boat, lines merging perfectly at every angle, sensuous caress of gliding brush, lubricated in fragrant color, soothing every character of singing wooden grain, basking in the soft light of the boathouse, looking down on the squall-shrouded bay, lost horizon of open sea curving out beyond. Over gentle din of spring rain on rusted tin roof, lost on the workbench among paint pots, wood shavings and tools, crackles an old dust-covered radio, playing faraway strains of ancient fiddle tunes. Listening and working slowly with gnarled, knowing hands, again the old man feels the pull of the oars in his arms and back, tastes the wind-borne spray against his lined face, knows the drama of the dying silverfish around his feet, hears the creak of the straining locks, feels the tide carry him to harbor, is young again. That's it, folks. Remember to say a little prayer for the folks in the Ukraine tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. That's a nice thought. Let's not forget those folks. They're in dire straits right now. Next up, and from a long way away, the east coast of England, Beadnell, England, Katrina Porteous. We've had some nice visits in the run-up to this thing, trying to arrange some times that worked. We're 8 hours apart, so it's quite early in the morning there, actually. So welcome, Katrina.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's just great to be able to connect like this and to hear everybody. It's been a fab evening, so thank you all so much. I'm just going to read one poem. I'm from the northeast of England, as Jay says, but a few years ago, I got to spend some time long lining on a small boat off the Suffolk coast. So this is a poem, in fact, for two voices. Obviously, there's just one of me, so I'm going to have to improvise a bit tonight. One of the voices is a man, because women in England don't tend to fish. We have a few women fishermen, but not many in this country. I've been off on many boats, spent a lot of time among fishermen and among boats. I've never fished for a living, but it's always been my life to be around boats and fishing. So I'll finish up with this excerpt from Longshore Drift. We've always lived on the edge, boy. Small boats, lines and nets. We've always fished as the old men fished, and the old men showed the sea respect, for they'd wait for the fish in their season, shooting a dozen and two. I'll tell you, there's just one skipper out there, and that's not you. When a dozen and two was your limit, your 12 long lines might fetch 100 stone. Now 100 lines won't land you 10, and there's the catch. Technology's killed the fishing. Sea never gets no rest. Now politics gonna finish the job with the law like a millstone round our necks.
Kettle bottom,
And
Lord
with
Louis, sugar boat and ship wash, Napes Bank, the Onion, in and out the dingle.
If we was to land every fish we caught, they'd still be there another year.
Kettlebottom, Lord Louis, Sugarboat and Shipwash, Napes Bank, the Onion, in and out the dingle, Inner Bank, Everwit, Magdapur the Ridge, Inner Sweeper, Outer Sweeper, in and out the dingle.
Hand over fist over fist over hand, quick as a sprinter, haul the long line. Salt spray and the free hook spinning, jerk of the wrist and the big cod writhing. Stop, fast, haul, hard, fist over hand over fist, and it snoods, spray and the free hook sprying, flick of the wrist and the cod thumps down. My body's at ease on the water more than on the land. I'm at home on the sea. I was born for this life. I call myself a happy man, though I've slogged out my guts for nothing but heartache and little pain. And I wouldn't want to see my own boy battered as the sea has battered me many a day. For how can you call it a living? Winter with no cod, and the boats getting fewer on the beach each year. I'm the last of the line. You can call me mad, but it's out on the boundless water, under the endless sky. I think of the people I meet on the land, and I know there's envy in their eyes. For how can you call it a living? Bound to an office desk. When you see that sun come up, God knows it's a hard haul and little rest. When you're hauling for home, my darling, when you're giving it all you can. But if I was to die in my sleep tonight, I die a happy man. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a great night.
Well, thank you, and for coming all that way. We sure appreciate you making the effort, and we hope that someday we'll get over there to visit with you, and we'll see if that happens sometime, maybe. But in the meantime, stay well. We're worried about all you folks across on the other side there. And anyway, this is about time to wrap this up. We've had a nice evening, quite a lot of variety, and thanks to our audience, and again to all our sponsors. And we will say goodnight shortly. There will be one more event tomorrow. Cannon Beach Arts Association is sponsoring a last read, which will be a virtual one. I believe it's at 4:00 on Sunday. Somebody might correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, thanks again for coming, and we'll be signing off from here for the 25th annual Fisher Poets Gathering. Thanks for coming.